has turned around its season. A win over the high-flying Hawks. And now they have come to Sydney on Easter Sunday and made it back-to-back wins. Ken's team starts to get a bit of skin in the game.
Alrighty, hello and welcome to the CreedCast. My name's Dave, and as always, thank you for listening or watching, whatever it may be, Spotify, Apple Pods, YouTube. We appreciate you, however you decide to intake our content. And once again, it's a great week to be doing this, as your Port Adelaide Footy Club did a bit of a mischief in Sydney, just like the Japanese midget submarines that snuck into Sydney Harbour on the evening of June 1st, 1942. Escaping with the points after messing about in Harbour City for chucking about a few torpedoes for a few hours and causing a bit of strife for the locals. It wasn't easy, but we escaped 13-7, 85 to 10-17, 77. 10-17, 77 is a hell of a scoreline to read out for the opposition, but we beat them anyway. That was the final, seeing us 3-3 in 10th place on the ladder on percentage at the end of the weekend. Jamie, it feels like a bad week to make this kind of comment, but Ollie Wines is okay, thankfully. How is your heart doing after that last quarter? Because mine was going at a fast rate by the end of that one. A lot of swear words from my lounge room as well for the neighbours to hear as the game wore on.
Yeah. Clock management mathematics was definitely getting a revision in my lounge room. A few choice words expressed, either muffled or otherwise. G'day to you, by the way, and g'day to everyone listening or viewing. Look, it got a bit hairy there. A bit annoying. But when I saw AFLX score call the win with 5 minutes to go, I knew that the planets would align and we would hold on. Although frustrating in the last quarter, we did the business, didn't we? And we've adjusted the course of our season, if you will. I wouldn't say we've turned our season around. We are at round 6, which is my season start time, as I've mentioned before. It got hairy. For a half, we looked like a very professional outfit up against a team that left a lot to be desired disposal-wise. And then in the second half, the screws tightened as Sydney tried to chase the game and chase their season a little bit. And we kind of went into our shells, particularly more in the fourth quarter, while the second half as a whole was in the negative score-wise for us. The third quarter was okay. But the fourth quarter, I think, was what is the source for a lot of people's frustration. It's something that needs to be addressed. We'll obviously get to that, but it was satisfying nonetheless that we're probably where we thought we might be after 6 rounds. Obviously not at the end where we could have been, but at the point where we might be after 6 rounds. Just going back to the preseason shows for those who need reminding or are new, welcome, by the way. So we gave a loss versus Collingwood, a win to Richmond, a win to Essendon, a win to St Kilda. And then it was a 50-50 with Hawthorn in Gatherand. We said because it's a 50-50 that would be a win, but also there could be a loss. So it's either 4-1 or 3-2. And then Sydney away, again, being a 50-50, I think we gave that to Sydney in our preseason shows. So either 4-2 or worst case 3-3, and that's where we sit. There's some losses, that we feel that we would like back very much now that we've kind of adjusted some things in our season. But pragmatically, after 6 rounds, we are where we thought we potentially would be, worst case scenario. So yeah, all is not lost, of course. We're in touching distance of the top 8, and some good signs, which is promising.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up kind of that preseason, how we looked ahead, because I was thinking about that a lot in the wake of the result. because we did kind of look at those couple of wins that we did, or a couple of games that we thought we'd win that we lost. Then these ones through this period were a lot of 50-50, and we've won 2 of the 50-50 coin flips, so to speak, as to how we previewed them. So it does make you go, I wish we'd gotten at least one of or both of Essendon and St Kilda, because then the platform's really there again. But we have at least got ourselves kind of on the ladder again, rather than just, it was teetering on the precipice of something very, very bad after the St Kilda result, and how dependent on how the Hawthorn game went. Obviously that went well, and then we've backed that up with an imperfect performance, but a good performance nonetheless in Sydney, a unique ground to play. We got out of the blocks early really well, and kind of built ourselves a platform within the game, which is an important thing to do in any AFL game. If you start well, you can sometimes, we had the opposite, and I was thinking about this a lot too. We had the opposite game against St Kilda, where we started incredibly poorly and couldn't bridge the gap, and Sydney kind of had to experience that themselves. So it's kind of like it's a flip flop of both of those games. So if I look at it that way, I go, you've got to take the ones when they come to you, even if you do have to hold off a team that finishes fast. But we kind of, we dropped the St Kilda game because we couldn't quite get over the hump because of the lead they built early, and they were just able to kick crucial goals at times. And we did the same thing against Sydney. I was a little bit annoyed because I thought with 6 minutes to go when Mitch kicked that goal, I thought, okay, that's the nail in the coffin. But then they kicked one right away again. And they kicked another one. I was like, oh no, it's back within. If they get 2 goals in 2 minutes, they're ahead. Like, as you said, the mathematics of time management. But yeah, I thought.
And I got to say,
go ahead.
Like their sub allocation kind of perfect stormed in the positive for them.
Yeah.
Like the freshest guy on the field was a capable forward, competing against a team, a defense that typically spends most of the time on the ground, might I add. It just kind of, they had to chase the game, and their sub was a capable forward who is a bit of a swingman in his own right and hasn't really lived up completely to his potential, but a fresh, capable forward at that, up against a tiring defense. It just, and us having made our sub, what was it, at half time, getting and that was after getting nothing out of Ollie Wines in the second quarter, for the amount of time that he did play in that quarter, and without a clearance or stoppage beast, if you will, as well. It just, that's obviously not an excuse. I put on Twitter afterwards that I think it was poor leadership on our behalf to put the clamps on, as well, to elaborate, to protect the lead from so far back. It's always fraught with danger, as everyone in football knows, and we've done that a couple of times now. Yeah, I think it is also noteworthy that their sub just happened to be someone who could play forward, where they desperately needed someone who could impose himself forward. And
I think one of the
freshest guy,
one of the shows, I can't remember which one, just said Aaron Francis turned into prime Charlie Curnow for a few minutes there. And it was.
I heard Wayne Carey as well.
There was a Wayne Carey. Yeah, there was, wasn't there? It was. I was sitting there thinking, I can say this for people watching on YouTube. You might be able to see I've got ginger in my beard. I was just, I did shout, "You ginger cunt!" at one point, like out of frustration. I was like, "What is going? Like, who is this bloke?" I know who Aaron Francis is, but I was just like, "Who is this bloke just taking the game away?" Because at the point, I was just like, "He's going to take this fucking game away from us." This sub that's come on.
Yeah. Who is this guy? It's the Bill Hoskin-Elliott moment. Yeah. I think you mentioned in the Patreon show. Like, don't do it. Don't allow that. Someone get a fucking hand in.
Yeah. And they'd been out of, I know they made that sub out of injury for themselves, but ours having come earlier in the game with such an important player as Ollie Wines has been through the first, it even got mentioned in commentary, and we've talked about it on the show in the last few weeks. He's one of the top disposal players in the league so far. And it's been really, really important for the last 18 months after his injury. The little bit of trouble he had with injury post Brownlow win, he's been really, really important again to how we work, and certainly with the midfield mix that we found last week with Rosie going behind the ball, everything's started working quite well. So Wines going off was a big,
hasn't it ever?
Yeah, it was a big loss. We'd already lost Joe Richards in the pre-game as well through illness. That's why Rory Atkins was sub. So there's by half time we'd had two key players because Joe Richards had a very good game and is becoming, integrating himself more and more into the side as he goes. So by half time, two key guys from our win over Hawthorn are gone. And so we're having to kind of adjust the mix. And you've talked about domino effect a lot already this year. The domino effect, sometimes it's not so noticeable, but yeah, Rosie started going on ball a little bit more. And as good as he is on ball, it's just like if you don't have the right mix of players in the midfield, yeah, we just lost it. Didn't win the stoppages. And obviously Sydney were coming as well. As the game went on, and we lost some prime movers or guys that can extract the ball and add to the contest, and we did lose the contest. Interesting game stats wise.
That's where yeah, definitely. And I've mentioned it in maybe it was the Collingwood review, just when all kind of hell is breaking loose for you. Like I've mentioned that it's a situation where I'd like to see a Sam Powell-Pepper just put into the guts. Just because he is like one of those type of players who, at the very least, he's not going to lose a contest, in my opinion. And at best, he's going to break through a stoppage and send it in the direction that we want to. We just couldn't get our hands on it. And when like the Ollie Wines in those situations, even if he gets his hand on the ball, he's very smart. He's hard to tackle. So either he creates a repeat stoppage on purpose to, again, manage the clock, or he's that hard to tackle that he can get that handball out to the players on the outside. There's just not many players who can match up against him. And that's where, and they were asking, it was Dermy and I can't remember who else was on the panel on Fox Footy at halftime. Like, are you moving Rosie into the middle now? And they're like, no, he's slicing and dicing it in his position, and he's one of the best on ground. Like, don't mate. And then we made that move, and like you mentioned, it kind of compromised our structure a little bit. When I think we could have benefited from being a bit smarter. I'm not sure I'm not sure how many CDAs or stoppages that Travis Boak was trusted with on the immediate ruck stoppage. But again, that's another thing. He's an All-Australian inside mid. He's aging, of course, but you just, in those moments, you're rolling back on habitual behavior and experience. And that's, just a couple of things that in those moments when it's really stacking up against us, and our fourth quarters haven't been great, as it's been well noted since. Just like for like. And you mentioned Connor Rosie isn't really a like for like for Ollie Wines.
Travis Boak had 11% CBAs, so of the CBAs. So he wasn't. And obviously Powell-Pepper 0, but it's I would have liked to have seen whether it be I don't know, Jackson Mead to get a few more, even if you're gonna, like, I don't know, because I don't know exactly who we should have, but looking at
but like we mentioned, Sydney's midfield is still their best line.
Very, very
and it's
good.
where Goulden is a big out, but they have got a lot of experience. And Mead, while I really like what he's done over the last year and a bit, it's that experience factor that comes to play in those really nervy, momentum shifting moments within a game. Like, momentum's hard to stop, of course, but
or just Jason Horne-Francis. Jason Horne-Francis had 59% at the centre bounce. It's just like maybe a little bit more from him as well.
And he kind of fell out of the game late. That's not to discredit his game as a whole, though, which I think it did get forgotten a little bit right in the immediate aftermath of the game.
It was concerning just in the clearance numbers while we're on it, though. But no, we'll leave that we'll get to the lines in a bit. We'll stick to the general notes for the moment. But overall, just that's kind of what led us down that path, and that's what I wanted to bring up. That while we can look at that last quarter onslaught that Sydney brought because they had a lot of experience and everything like that, we did have some attrition we had to deal with in the game, and I think it's important to note, regardless of if it's a little bit of luck with their profligacy in front of goal or whatever it may be. Some of that does come down to the way we were defending okay, even though the defense was tiring. We were not giving them a whole lot of easy chances, although I did actually roll off my couch when Hayden McLean dropped that fucking mark in the like last 90
Oh,
seconds.
yeah, I
I was
keep
like,
forgetting about that.
jeez, I watched the replay and I was stressing. It's so funny when you watch a replay and even though you know what's happened, you're still getting stressed again. And I was having that when I watched the replay again. And yeah, that McLean drop, I was just like, how the fuck, like you got, and we've talked about it a lot. Footy is about taking your run, like taking the moments when you've got the momentum and then kind of hold, how you mitigate it. And sometimes you somehow make your own luck through that. And that's just a shit drop mark. But then on the other side, that's just Mitch Georgiades just not quite
Oh,
get to the 4 marks that he just like spilled, but almost had. And a couple of them, I think he did have, like, depending on,
me too. Me
yeah.
too. This has fucked me off ever since what was it,
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon is the umpires seem to adjudicate it like you would a catch in a game of cricket, where in football, I think if you pouch the ball and you take it to ground, that's the mark. And there
Mhm.
was definitely 2 occasions where he pouched the ball, but in the motion of falling on the ground, it wasn't spoiled. He didn't drop it. It's a big balloon of fucking air. Like, I think you pay that. You absolutely pay that.
And it gets paid a lot.
We've mentioned a few.
Like,
It does. It
yeah.
does. You grab the ball, you take it to ground. That's the mark, as far as I'm concerned. If it pops out when you hit the ground, again, you're holding a big bag of air. That's going to happen.
A lot
But
of speckies that
put
happen,
in
it
the
pops
work.
out when they come down, but they pay it because they're like,
Yeah,
it's
they
a
still
specky.
pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And I think he got up a few times, and he's like, "For fuck, like, what do I have to do?" On top of the fact that, which again has been a bit of a theme over the last few weeks since we've kind of turned our form around, is like he's getting his hands to a lot of ball, and like he's that far away from just having an absolute fucking blinder. He's in really good form, Mitch, but
Mhm.
again, yeah, that's erring too far to the forward line. But
Yeah.
just generalities, like, yeah, come on.
I wanted to make a note on, and this is just, it got called up in commentary a lot, and some great Dwayneisms in the game with his the Sydney Concert Ground. What a shit deck to play a professional AFL game on
Horrible.
that was.
Horrible.
Players slipping up all over the place. Like it's amazing that the AFL, when you compare it, I mean, ultimately, I think the Karen Rolton Oval stuff for the SA cricket team worked out really well for the vibes in the end for the Sheffield Shield final. But just in the whole lead up
Yeah.
to that and the controversy over will they get the ground ready, I was like, Adelaide Oval was obviously going to be in better nick anyway. But just the fact that AFL had concerns with one thing Andrea Bocelli just tearing up the entire fucking like just go to the
Yeah. And they have to
just
relay turf,
yeah.
not pull out a drop in pitch and put a different drop in pitch in. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very, very, one thing I was thinking throughout the game, I was just like, if my cynicism about football actually comes true, we're going to lose a player to injury. So I'm glad, knock on wood, doesn't happen any other time, but that game is done and nothing
Oh
happened.
yeah,
I was really, really
I
worried
wouldn't
someone
be
was gonna,
surprised if the AFLPA,
yeah.
yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised if the AFLPA weren't on the phone to the AFL just going like, how the fuck can you let this happen?
Mm,
Like you just said, like players can get injured. We saw how often they were slipping over. Just an awkward gap in the relay turf, and you're rolling ankles, you're doing ligaments, syndesmosis injuries. Yeah, it's pathetic. From a professional league, I might say.
mm,
This is the professional elite competition of this sporting code.
yeah.
And it's 2025.
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of other leagues around, like whatever the biggest teams and biggest stadiums and other world sports wouldn't allow that kind of stuff to happen. I mean, NFL fields are just kind of concert fields anyway, so it doesn't matter as much in how they prepare. But
Mm.
if it was like Anfield field soccer, with Liverpool doesn't allow they only have concerts in the off season. They won't do it in, there's not when Taylor Swift
And
did.
didn't they say it was the first concert held at the SCG for like decades or something like that, or a very long time?
Yeah, I didn't actually know
Commentary.
that, but yeah, someone
Um,
else on Twitter did make the amusing anecdote that was just like, oh, if only Sydney had a dedicated opera space to hold this concert as well. I can't remember who it was, so I can't give credit
I
to it.
saw,
I
I
did see it
saw
pop
that,
up.
so it's obviously a mutual, Twitter person between us two, and I totally forgot about this. I read that and I was like, yeah, what are they doing at Accor Stadium? Because the Opera House was the obvious point that person was making. I can't remember who it was either,
Yeah.
but my point still stands. Like they have a stadium that seats more people
Mm.
in Sydney. Was there anything on there on April 3rd or whatever it was? I don't know, but yeah,
That is also concerning that it was
really
that long
poor.
ago and the deck looked like just yeah, like if you can't get the deck up in 3 weeks or whatever it was, then just you shouldn't be doing it. And yeah, and ultimately, yeah, we're lucky that there wasn't any injuries on the day. But I was really worried as I was watching play. Like there was one point when a Sydney player slipped over, and it was like I can't remember who it was. If it was Cochrane or someone could have
Tom
got to him.
Cochrane.
Yeah, but then he kind of slipped as the
Yeah,
Sydney player slipped, and it's just like this
yeah.
real Benny Hill moment
It's
of just
almost
like
synchronized.
yeah, it's just like you needed the like woo, 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 like slipping sound effects with both of them as they were like because it's just like what is
Like
going
on
on? And
Australia's funniest home
yeah,
videos.
exactly.
All the
Oh, I
sound
miss
bites.
Saturdays at 6:30 or whenever it was when you sit down and just watch people making it like absolute. And when you think back to it, it's just like, how did people survive some of those videos? Like Australia's funniest home videos. And like when as an adult, I'm like, I just watch people
Yeah.
almost die every week at times. I think on those videos,
It's
but
like kids falling through the springs of the old trampolines and shit like that. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, far out.
or a dad just
Like,
like
yeah,
falling through a
falling down a
skyride.
ravine.
Yeah, like that person
Because
almost
wasn't it
died.
Funniest Home Videos and then Hey Hey It's Saturday?
Yeah, yeah,
Was that the natural order of things?
it was in
Don't
my
know if they're on the
house.
same
I
channel
think
or if like you channel surfed.
I don't
Um,
know,
yeah,
especially yeah.
it's going back a long way now.
My old 68 centimeter Mitsubishi branded TV that my parents had.
Yeah,
For the
box TVs.
yeah, still got it somewhere. I think it's in one of the old farmhouses, but yeah, it's yeah, great memories. But yeah, that's what it was. That's kind of what that video, that little
Mm,
moment of slipperiness was. And but yeah, that shouldn't be happening on a professional AFL field. So I had to make that a note of that because that was at times we watch the game from afar, and if you're not watching it with intent eyes, you go, oh, it's just misplayed. That people are slipping and it's bad disposal. But across the game, it probably does have an impact on the players' psyches as well, playing the game. So not making an excuse, but I have to imagine if you're a player running around on that field and starting to find your feet really hard to find on the field across the game, it's going to be in the back of your mind like, shit, I've got to, this is another thing I have to worry about that I shouldn't have to worry about. So it is a piss poor
mm,
standard for a game that does a fairly good job of being quite professional these days. But then they make a big deal about certain things. But then,
mm.
if it's made people money, then they just shove that to the side and just hope that people don't notice. But good on the commentators for making note of it enough that it was quite obvious. And yeah, Dwayne Russell eventually making his
Yeah.
Sydney concert ground little note. I wanted to make one note on just some stats in general before we get into the lines, and I was wondering if you'd noticed this as well because I thought it was really interesting in the pressure rating as it was popping up throughout the first half in
Mm,
particular. We were really up on pressure, often by
mm.
30 or
Like
40.
200s.
Yeah, and they were down in the 160s, 170s, sometimes 150s. It wasn't even because often you can see like 200 versus 180, and it's just like it is quite
Yeah, but
close,
you're
but
like, yeah, yeah.
there's a margin
Mm.
there still, but yeah, we were quite up on that. But right from the start, contested ball and ground ball gets was in the negative for us and never got better. We lost by minus 46.
No, no, it
Yeah,
got bad.
yeah, it got. It's just like stop. He's already dead, but we weren't. Um,
Dead.
but yeah, it was. But I find it an interesting dichotomy. I'm wondering how you think about it because ground ball gets and like so minus 46 contested. I did have the ground ball numbers here as well. Total for team. So I'm just scrolling through my extensive notes here. Yeah, ground ball get to a minus 43 as well total. Then tackles where we were plus 15 by the end of the game, plus 18 at halftime as well. So we were our intent and hunt was pretty good. We were just there's two areas of the game that we're and Sydney are very. I think the commentators noted it. I don't know it myself intently, but I've kind of heard it in the past, and I guess we got a good view of it on the day. They're an elite ground ball team. Brody Grundy was the best on the ground, so he kind of won, and then we'll get to that more in the lines. But yeah, I was just
Yeah, he
wondering
had
how
a
you
good
thought
game,
of it.
Grundy.
He did. But did you kind of find that an interesting? Because I found it really interesting to try to like as a
Very
kind of
interesting.
because it's stats. People go, oh, you lose contest, you lose in ground ball. You're like you might sit there and go, oh, well, you were a piss poor team and weren't hunting the ball well enough. But we were we did end up on the plus side in tackles comfortably, and our pressure was good for a fair part of the game. And our pressure acts numbers when you look at the pressure acts, we're 9 of the top 10 players in pressure acts. So we kind of were pressuring the ball. And perceived pressure was and on Sydney disposal was really good. It's just like there's other statistical markers we were quite down in. So I found it an interesting dichotomy in how you look at the game. If you look at just one set of stats, you go, we must have been pretty poor. But you look at that other side and go, okay, we were doing some things good. It's just marrying it all up, hopefully, eventually.
Yeah, and I guess what you're just explaining there is broadening your horizons of statistical analysis. Like it does, you can get very caught up, especially if you're watching and listening to a lot of footy media or focusing on some very few select statistics, but it is important to look at everything as a whole. One thing I would say, yeah, very interesting statistical sheet from a team stats point of view. You mentioned the St Kilda game on our behalf and how we felt after it, and Sydney fans may have a case. Shout out to Donny, a big Sydney fan in the Twitter sphere.
He's always so kind. He's always so kind in the immediate aftermath, which I know that it would take me a day to reply that way. So he's he's a very, very stoic man, considering his team often lets him down. So
yeah. But I think one thing I would say is I think a lot of those numbers were heavily skewed in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
Which is something to acknowledge, and it's also something to exemplify our woes.
If I can just butt in for a moment, I did a thing this week. I did actually go through and take a screenshot of the halftime stats. We were minus 24 and contested at halftime. I don't have
and then that just about doubled.
Yeah, so with the contested ball, we were consistently down in. I think ground ball, they noted we were down in early as well, and that got worse. So those two probably were.
I know they were commenting on it.
Yeah, that was a trend throughout the game. But otherwise, yeah, there is a lot of the other stats as far as some of the other ones that did disposal numbers blew out in that last quarter as well. Like they were a lot closer. They did have more of the ball in the first half slightly, but by the end of the game it had blown out. What did they end up in disposals? Like fucking
383.
Yeah, so they were plus
to our 307.
Yeah, so they're plus 76 with quick math, and it was only plus 15 at halftime. So yeah, they did blow out. And I think that I didn't do it at 3/4 time, but yeah, as to your point, I think that did blow out in the last quarter. A lot of that.
Yeah, I think clearances. That's good work by you. I know you've been wanting to take screenshots. It is a lot of work that the fans shouldn't have to do, though. If the AFL just opened up team stats quarter by quarter, not just player stats, but I think. I mentioned it on a show last year where contested possession, a lot of people would assume it's a binary figure, a black and white figure, but there are a lot of aspects to a game of football that constitute what a contested possession is, including free kicks, which, I don't really have any major comments there. Sydney won by +8, but that's just a total aside. There are many factors to it. Losing it by 46, was it, in the end, is quite a concern. And you would imagine on any other day, you're probably losing the game. But I think this is a really interesting one where I mentioned the professionalism in the first half. And it's a complete contrast to some of the feedback that we've given to our team in the start of the year, where we've lamented the over possession of the football, whereas we use the ball efficiently. In this game, I think it was 74% to 69.5% disposal efficiency in our favor. We kicked accurately. and we didn't overpossess the ball. We had a more direct route to 50, and whether that's a lack of pressure or a slight shift in game plan, sorry, a lack of pressure on Sydney's behalf,
Mhm.
or a tweak to our game plan that we've more or less been hoping for since the very start of the season. So maybe a contrast in styles, and then Sydney, on the other hand, through pressure, had to dispose of the ball more often. Yeah, there's just some aspect. It depends how you're looking at it. In the end, efficiency inside 50, I think we were blowing them completely out of the water in the first half, and then and depends if you're going scores or goals.
Yeah.
Their efficiency scores inside 50 ended up ahead of ours. So there's so many things from the eye test that tell you different from a statistical point of view, but then there's some things that make absolute sense. But it's the whole cause and effect, like correlation, isn't necessarily causation, and I don't know what to make of it all, just because it is very obscure. And Dean Cox, even in his post match press conference, acknowledged that sure, the statistics look good on their behalf, but if they were lucky enough to get over the line, um, or sorry, how the game finished, did they deserve to win? Probably not. And
Mm.
I would agree with that. Obviously, I'm biased, but it's fair enough for him to acknowledge that, despite the statistics showing some avenues that you would go, if you're winning these, you're winning a game of football.
Yeah.
It's a very long-winded way to say, like, I don't really know what to make of it, and I'm just astounded by some of the disparity in some of those key statistics. But I also think there are realities as to why some of those disparities occur. Um, it's not just you weren't tough in the contest or you were lazy in
Mm.
the contest, because, like you said, our pressure numbers and our tackling numbers were great, and we won those criteria. So
Yeah.
it's where trends over time come
Mm.
into it, and yeah, but it's just a really strange stat sheet to look at.
Yeah. The one more statistical note before we get into the lines. I think it's just interesting. I was just scrolling down and kind of caught my eye again as I was looking at it. I did notice it when I was doing my stats sheet this morning. Um, the disposal numbers, obviously, we just said they're almost minus 80 as far as total disposals, but we kicks was 203 to 202,
Mm,
202 our way. It was the handballs,
hmm.
was 181 to 104 their way, and we talked about it like in that Richmond game, it was 1-1
Richmond
handball.
game.
Yeah, whereas in this game, we actually and we talked about it last week too. We're starting to seem to find a little bit more of the. It's never going to be perfect because that's the AFL game. The AFL game is always
That's football. Yeah.
yeah, it's a unique story every time a game is played. But our kick to handball ratio has gone. We've kind of figured out when to put the foot on the ball, and it's certainly the SCG sometimes just getting it forward. Like at some points we got it too far forward, but we can get to that in a moment. But there's few out in the full in that pocket where they were clearly going for. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
and we had
Yeah.
86 marks to 61 as well. So we were kicking them, and kind of like last year in the prelim, they kind of fucked us with just possessing the ball and marking the ball and making the game played at their pace. Whereas they had to play this game in a little bit more of a chaotic style to get back into it. And it did work a little bit, but it wasn't sustainable enough and consistent enough, because they get like that third quarter, they got like 3 goals in the bounce really quickly, but then, we'd get one back and just keep kind of edging forward. So yeah, it's a really interesting statistical game to look at. Obviously, if we'd lost by 8 points, then we'd be looking at it slightly differently, but, well, it'd still be similar, but it's just, we're talking about a loss instead of a win, and you go, where are those fine margins? And it is just one of those games that, teams had one team had strengths in areas, we had strengths in other areas, and ultimately one team won by 8 points. And regardless of their injuries and everything, they were a grand finalist last year. They've been a powerhouse of a team for the last decade. And for some reason, every game's a little bit different, but we often head up to the SCG and somehow get a result in often heart-pounding fashion, but we get the result nonetheless, which is the ultimate, at the end of the day, when you're going away to a team that's good, however the result may come, is ultimately going to be something that I'm quite happy with. It's And we played well in that first half as well. We'll get to the Lions now, I think.
Well, yeah, we
Unless you have any
absolutely
other
did.
notes to
Yeah,
make in general, but we did play well in that first half and gave ourselves a platform within the game, which I talk about a lot, and you do as well. That just giving yourself a platform in the game, and then seeing what you can do when the other team does inevitably have their run is that's football. That's modern football, especially. The commentators made note of that too on the night. They said, modern football can change very quickly, but you've just got to take advantage when you have the possession.
Yeah, one last point, and on a similar note, and erring again into forward line type chat, but it is a more mental note, is that we actually kicked the first goal in every quarter. So I know as a fan, and I would imagine it would be there as a player, like if you're behind, changing that momentum is made much easier when you can extract the first goal out of a quarter, or from a break, I should say. And I thought, particularly in the second half, once everyone had had that extra time to settle, we not made a point. Like I'm sure we make a point of every every stoppage to end up being a goal. But yeah, we kicked a goal at the start of every quarter just to remind the universe that we had the ascendancy, and you were going to have to really take it off of us. Just a small note. It doesn't always work out that way, but I thought it was important when their crowd was getting up and about, at the start of each quarter, wanting a response. And then as an opposition team, it's an easy way to just put them back in their seats.
Yeah.
Something I noticed on the night.
Yeah, no, I thought that too on the night, especially when I got the first one to the last quarter. I was like, I think I can start relaxing now. Obviously, it didn't happen that way, but it was those goals ultimately did tell in the tail at the end of the game. Even whether it be the Mitch Georgiades ones with 6 minutes to go when they'd had a little bit of a run again. I think the ultimate problem for us on the night, just as far as fans go, it was like they always seemed to, when we got a goal, actually getting it back to the centre sometimes gave them, they got the centre clearance, sometimes it would help them there. So, but ultimately, it is a good point. You kind of just not letting a team get in a sustained run of goals, just getting one here and there, and certainly at the start of quarters. And there was, obviously a great Willem Drew one. It just helps. Never letting a team get against a sustained run is a very important thing in a game of football, particularly when you've given yourself a 3 or 4 goal head start. If you can keep just peppering a goal in here and there, even though the other team is the one that's got to chase the game, that really does help. Kind of like the heat checks or whatever, and in an NBA game, sometimes a team gets in a run, but if you can just drain a couple down the other end and just stop them from really getting a sustained run of point scoring on.
Modern basketball. Yeah, very much like modern football, is you just need a circuit breaker.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, teams can go on some big runs, and just getting that circuit breaker and putting a disruption in the momentum is so important these days.
Yeah. Which line did you want to start with? I can't really think of which way to go because I've got different thoughts on each one.
Let's go back to front.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go back to front. Let's start with the defense.
Awesome. Good. I think good performances on the day again, which is very just binary review. But I guess just straight up my spotlight actually. I'll go with my spotlight first, just right off the bat. I'm going to go with Lachie Jones again.
Nice.
I thought he had some moments.
Yes.
I thought he had some just moments where
continue.
Yeah, he had 12 intercepts for the game, which is by far our leader, ahead of Aaliyah, and Butters was up there as well. But he kind of playing at third big defender. He floated across a couple of packs at times to take that intercept mark when Aaliyah or Asava or both would have, whether it be McLean or McCartan or whoever was down back in that weird mix going that Sydney's doing at the moment, which is again getting some talk in the post-match dissection by the media. But he would just float across and take a really strong mark and kind of be the foil for their key defender lock-up play that they're trying to do in however they're playing their opponents. And whether it be dispose of the ball at 80-odd%, which is just what you want out of kind of what, that or more is perfect for a guy like Lachie Jones. He had a couple of moments where he kind of just let a defender get over the back, but it was a very chaotic game at times. And overall, and he did actually recover quite well in one of those moments. So yeah, I really liked Lockie Jones' game and just how he kind of acted as that third big defender at times and was able to use his body and his closing speed again. I've talked about many times because I love how he chases a motherfucker down. It gets me going. Just
Fuck yeah.
just aesthetically is beautiful to watch. Watching him move, but yeah, I just think he had his game as that foil for the two key defenders in Asava and Aaliyah, who both I think Asava had a really good game as far as a defender goes. Still his disposal, like what he does with the ball. His disposal efficiency always looks reasonable. It's not like I don't think it's the highest of effective disposals sometimes because it's just like he's shooting the ball downfield.
It's simple. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know what you're getting because he went at 100%
yeah, which is
Asava
not
from
what
his
I would
seven
have expected.
disposals.
But like I understand why it's there because he's not turning it over. It's just like it's not like the most effective
Yeah.
of disposals at times, but he's doing what he needs to do. And then Lear again was great. Nothing more to say about Lear. He's fucking fantastic. He did have a couple of moments. He should have taken him up. The sun, I think, was an issue in the first half. And I don't know if
Yeah,
there was a
and they got
mark
a
he should have
goal
taken on the
to relief
boundary that
him.
ended up in the Hayward goal,
Mm.
I think. He did just
Yeah.
get lost for one in the last quarter, but that's just sometimes you do get beaten. So he had a couple of moments, but overall, I think we don't win that game without those three in there. So yeah, I was pretty happy with the efforts, despite, and I think we made it hard for them in that last quarter. They just assaulted us over and over again, and that's why they got some results. And HORNE-FRANCIS turned into Wayne Carey, Charlie Curnow, whoever it may be. But yeah, I think for three quarters in particular, the defense held up pretty well, and then they just had to kind of watch clock and try to mitigate damage as that third quarter onslaught came on. But yeah, Lockie Jones, I was quite reasonably happy with. He's still got things to iron out in his game. And there's a few like Josh Sin. I think at times still his positioning is an issue as far as how when he doesn't have the ball, if the ball's gone the other way, he's still getting a little bit lost at times. But
And I think that coincides with Rosie moving out of defense, like we mentioned after
yes,
last
yeah,
week. A young defender in getting a consistent run, having his captain alongside him for direction, I think seriously improved his positioning and prowess last week. And I think he took one or two intercept marks, Josh Sin as well. And
yeah.
then yeah, I think it seemed to kind of fall off. How
He
many
took
was
took
it?
that one right at the end of the first half, didn't he? Like when it was kind of, I think Warner hacked one
Yeah,
in,
it kind
and
of went over the top.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but onto Lockie Jones, he's starting to do the things like he's Lockie Jones is starting to do what you pick him to do.
mm,
Uh, you mentioned his disposal efficiency, his intercept possessions. You mentioned the Gramble game overall. He had 5, which was equal second for Port Adelaide. Equal second to a Zach Butters with fucking 10,
yeah,
which is just fantastic. But yeah, Lockie Jones. I noticed that on a few occasions when Heaney drifted forward after copying it, the obvious tag in the middle from Willem Drew. Willem Drew handed over to Lockie Jones as well on a couple of occasions. Unfortunately, just through the chaos of footy, like you mentioned, Willem Drew was still stuck on Heaney a couple of times in the game in the forward line, and Heaney benefited either from a direct goal or a score involvement.
mm,
But yeah, Lockie Jones, it's important to note he was the 4th champion data rated power player on the ground as well.
mm,
To go with what you're saying, he was absolutely going to be on my list, and yeah, I'm just really impressed. 74% game time, so I think it's also important to note that I don't think Bergman is 100%.
no. I think it even got mentioned.
Bergman is still doing some Bergman things,
Yeah,
but I don't think he's 100%. And that's where the kind of continual improvements that Lockie Jones is making in his game, particularly this game, and then a bit of the last game, negating Bergman's kind of malaise, clearly through that leg injury. And look, don't want to burn a guy out like that. if we
Mm.
don't need to. Yeah, if he needs a rest, just fucking rest him. Because I don't think it's a form issue for Bergman. Like I said, he's still doing some Bergman things in the last couple of games, but since he did that leg, um,
Yeah.
or the knee or whatever it was, like, yeah, I don't, yeah, I think there's something going on there. But Lockie Jones, fantastic pick for your spotlight. Yeah, loved his game. Um, the correction of some mistakes he made is a lot better. But yeah, I think the biggest amount of criticism, unfairly, is the marking. I don't think he's ever really had an issue with it. There's some outliers which have been heavily emphasized for no good reason. But I think the most important one for me, and it's the one that I'll be consistently looking at in association with Lockie Jones, is this ground ball game, um,
Mm.
which I think has dramatically improved, particularly as we've found an upswing in our season. And he has been able to string some games together now,
Yeah.
and hopefully, touch wood, he doesn't get injured, he doesn't get concussed, he doesn't get suspended, although I don't think he would, because yeah, he's using at 81.8%. I wouldn't say, wouldn't be surprised if his average is, in that region, high 70s. Fantastic. You mentioned Asava and Alir, and I mentioned that, like, with Aaron Francis coming on at the end and our defense tiring, I think that's where those Asava moments are probably more prevalent now, because he
Mm.
is actually starting games well and having a much consistent curve of his performance. But I think it's just, yeah, later in the games where, like, he had, 95% time on
Yeah.
ground. Aaliyah had 100% time on ground. I think we need to be careful with that. And, you know, Azurk Thatcher, thankfully, getting back into selection realms is promising, because it might
Mm.
mean we can actually lighten a bit of the load, maybe do some management. But yeah, that's another story. I do think that Sava is performing his role well in conjunction with Alir, who I think is in all Australian conversation at this point in the season, while albeit very early in the season. You couldn't ask for a lot more. I just think we need to be careful, because we are dropping off late, and that's when some of these mistakes defensively are creeping in. And
Mm.
while we've been able to hold on in this game, and thankfully we were just that far ahead against Hawthorn that it didn't matter. But you fear that there will be a game where those lapses due to exhaustion can cost you. So that's
Yeah.
one comment I'd make, but I don't want to take away from the system. And I think our defensive system is holding up. We're having to absorb nominal amounts of pressure, unlike a Collingwood game or something like that, where it's unnecessary pressure that the defense is having to absorb. This is Australian rules football against a good side, a proud club away from home, repeat entries, things like that. Football scenarios, I think they're really holding up well.
Mm.
Kane Farrell, I think one of his best games so far for the season.
Yeah.
And they mentioned in commentary, now that they've made that move for Rosie back, all of a sudden the halfback line looks very, very damaging. When
Mm.
you consider Bergman, Farrell, Rosie, and then we've been just talking about Lockie Jones. It allows you as a fan to just take a breath and go, all right, I think things are going to be okay,
Yeah.
which is interesting, because I think we've acknowledged that while our game plan was mostly centered around Dan Houston's exemplary disposal, um,
Who?
a half back line, or half back is a position where we're blessed with talent and
Mm.
blessed with riches. So yeah, look, not to get all like, yeah, pie in the sky, but it's working out well. I think our defensive structure is hitting a point where, if you stack up each round so far, I think they would take the chocolates as our best performed line from the
Mm.
first 6 rounds of the season. And I think the last 2 games have only pushed that further.
Yeah. And I think when we get to the midfield, there'll be some of that criticism of how where the pressure comes on to the defense late in the games comes from the midfield getting overrun a little bit at times, despite their talent and how they do continue to compete and battle. But we just, we're losing some of those key indicators, despite the pressure around, some of those things we talked about as positives before. Some of those key indicators of midfield prowess, we're consistently losing. And when a team gets on top of you in that realm, and they're the ones that have to chase a game, that's sometimes where the pressure does come onto a defense that does, make them look worse at times. Because I saw people bagging Asava in that last quarter run on Twitter or whatever, and I was just like, it's not him causing this, run that Sydney are on. He's just there for where the run is coming to. That's starting. All of that stuff starts upfield. Like if Asava and Aaliyah are under pressure repeatedly from whatever, I can't remember what the number was. The inside 50s for Sydney in the last quarter was insane.
Exponential.
Yeah. But that all comes from, entries are coming from not doing enough up the field. So, for what they're doing in the structure, and the structure held, it was, creaking under the pressure of the battle, but the structure is held in the last couple of weeks. We don't want to have to keep getting out to a 40, 30, 40, 50, 70 point lead to just have to hold it at the end. Like, it's still, as much as I enjoyed that game against Hawthorn, it's still annoying to me that I had to feel some nerves after being up 70 points, because you never should. But that's, modern football is trending in a way that you can bridge gaps a lot quicker than you used to be able to with the athleticism and just the way the game is played. So it's just something you do have to deal with at times. Sports is never easy to be a fan of, but we should be better in those aspects. But as far as you said, the structure, we were really worried about it preseason, especially with, and it was troubling in those first couple of weeks when Asava wasn't there either. It was really not working at all with Aaliyah as a lone hand as a proper key.
Finlayson for one game.
Yeah, it looked good in preseason, but but since Asava's been back, he's, as I've said before, it's added that spine there, and as you said, it's like the structure is looking good, and the performances are holding to that structure, and players in Asava's playing his role and playing it well. I think he took like 5 intercept marks out of his 7.
I was going to say, I think the balance in our defensive system is the fact that we provide a contest on the ground, but also we can hold up in the air. And I think that's actually contributed to the really slight.
Well. Like Asava,
he does. He's a strong man.
Yeah,
I've mentioned that last week, is that if he's in front position, I back him more often than not to take that mark. And I think he tried it out on a couple of occasions against Sydney. And then I think there was one occasion late where I thought he was in a competitive enough position to challenge for the mark. But I think that little voice in the back of his head kind of said, you should spoil this by the book. You should go for the spoil, where just with a bit more experience and confidence, which he, I think he should have. If he's going for that mark, I think he's taking it. Can't give a specific time or who it was against, but there was a moment where I think he did get outmarked because he didn't make that bold decision to challenge for the mark, when I think he was in better position. But there's also been some commentary on the way that we're manning up defensively from a full team press, or not press because we're man on man, but from a full ground defensive structure, where we're making the ground really small, and we're forcing, well, it's more or less come in the last 2 games. So let's take that against Hawthorn and now against Sydney. We've forced them to kick long. And like I mentioned, with our aerial capabilities, you've got Asava, who's in good marking form right now. Aaliyah, who we all know what he can do in the air. Bergman is a great contested mark and general mark, exemplary general mark, a one grab marker. Lockie Jones showed proficiency in aerial combat, if you will. So I don't know. Again, correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but I don't know if this firming of our defensive structure has allowed us to really press teams up against the wing and force them long, because we know that we're quite proficient right now taking marks in the air. or at least halving contests and trusting our midfielders and whatnot from a reset to get the ball back in our favour and going the other way.
Yeah, I'd like that because that has come up a lot in the commentary over the last couple of weeks. I think we talked about it in the Hawthorn game review last week, and then again this week it came up. Commentators just talking about they're just shutting off supply lines and not letting them get the diagonal switch.
Not allowing teams to switch.
Yeah, and even the one time we did corral them on one side, and they did go I can't remember who it was that was calling for it, and they did eventually get the ball over there, but then we kind of it was so slow moving, they got the ball forced. There. It was still it didn't allow them to quickly. There wasn't a switch and run. It was a switch just for a player that was in a bit more space, and I think they still ended up going down the line which came to a contest and a stoppage. So, in that first half, I think because where the game started getting a little bit of pressure was when they got on top in both the centre clearances and the stoppage in the second half, because the first half differential at centre clearance was -1, so pretty close, and same with stoppage was -1. So both areas we were just, so it was 16-15 at halftime in the stoppage, 5-4 in the centre, so pretty even overall. We're just being shaded by Sydney in both of those ones, but then at the end of the game, we were -5 from the centre and -8 from stoppage. So they got just more clearance game that second half, which in such a small field allowed them to get the ball down. They get the clearance and out and get that kick downfield, which if you're getting a stoppage, whether it be a halfback or in the middle or whatever, if you just one kick on the SCG, you're getting it down to at least the forward 50 flank, if not deeper sometimes.
Especially from McCain Farrell.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for Sydney, it was like they were just getting those ones quite deep as well. So, yeah, the defensive structure and being able to at least, like I said, at halftime we were even on those stoppages. It's just in the second half that we got soundly beaten more. So when our stoppage game and clearance game is when we can match it with the other team and with our defensive structure, we can control the game a bit more in the second half. That's where, and that a lot of those came in that last quarter as well. Again, as you said, a lot of those statistical markers at the end of the game were heavily swung in Sydney's favour in the last quarter, where we just lost a bit of control, and whether the loss of Ollie Wines, though he didn't have a big impact because it was probably some way early in the second quarter where that heart condition really popped up, and thankfully he's fine. And I wasn't overly worried for him because as soon as it popped up, I thought, it's the same thing again probably. And I think they've said it's not a life-threatening condition anyway. Though you do still, it's a heart thing. It doesn't matter. I'm always going to have that little tinge of worry. But for as far as the intents and purposes of the game, and I don't know if you have anything else on the defense because we're starting to talk midfield anyway. If we just swing to the middle,
the game plan change is probably my last point. And it'll be interesting now to see how other teams try and combat that. Because we've found a good niche which is different to what some other teams are doing right now, which gives you an edge. Let's move on to the midfield.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting midfield game because I think it's hard to get a read on it as far as a game totality goes, because you do go, well, Ollie going out gave them something, or gave Sydney something to work on, and something that we couldn't. It's as much as you try to change things in game with injuries, and you always have to be flexible to know that an injury can happen at any time.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate that the team is never expecting. Ollie's been a pretty reliable on-field performer in the last 18 months as far as his health goes. It really is just the heart condition popped up once last year and again once this year. He's mostly been pretty reliable as keeping himself fit and on-field. So it's not one of those ones you're expecting. Not that you expect injuries ever really, but, he'd be one of those ones you'd expect to keep himself going. So I think that change, I don't know how much we can take out of it, but just looking at it, it is still a concern that, the contest is everywhere on the field, but it is a lot in the middle. Certainly Zach Butters didn't let himself down in that department. I'm sure we'll talk about those stats later, but overall the contest and the clearance game is still a concern to me, because we just, despite, I think Sweet got beaten, not badly, but he got beaten. Yeah. Brody Grunkey just better at above the head. Sweet won the hit out numbers, but I think hit outs to advantage was in Brody's favour, and Brody's ground ball.
He just got beaten by a seasoned veteran a seasoned champion
Brody
who
Grundy's
knows
pretty
what they're
fucking good at
doing.
footy. Like
Yeah, it was a bit
had,
like the Melbourne game late last year. Sweet has had a fantastic run of form since, let's say, midway through last year. We came up against Melbourne at the G, and Gawn taught him a bit of a lesson.
mhm,
I don't think he let himself down necessarily in that game, and I don't think he did in this game. One thing I would say though is whether they're there or not, I think he just needs to be cautious of the amount of free kicks that he's giving
mhm,
away at stoppage. It happened last week against Lloyd Meek, who again provided a big like pound for pound challenge,
mhm.
and that can like you see it all the time in football when outnumbers. Oh, sorry, mismatches all around the field cause free kicks because the lighter person tends to scramble at the contest. And like I said last week, I think some of them were there, some of them are at 50-50 and can be let go. There was definitely examples of that this week, but just I don't know. I don't know what he can do, like, and because some of them are definitely there, but the ruck lotto also comes into it. It'd be hard for him, and he definitely looks frustrated, not as a whole, but in those moments, he looks a bit perplexed as to what he could or couldn't do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think he still had a serviceable game as a whole. What were the hit out numbers like?
He had
41 to we actually won hit out.
yeah,
So
and he had
um
30. He had
as a
30
whole.
in the direct battle with Grundy. He had 39-32. Um, in Sweet's favour, it's just his hit out that he had. Grundy had two more to advantage, and there was a couple of
Yeah.
moments where Sweet had a beautiful hit out and went to space, but there was like three. Like he tapped it deliberately to a pocket of space in the centre circle. So this is one of the Sydney clearance numbers came from a Sweet hit out straight to space where you're hoping like a Butters or a HORNE-FRANCIS or whoever, one of those type of dashing players that comes off of his opponent and just dashes through and grabs it. Just two Sydney players. We were in immediate and it went Sydney's way, Sydney clearance. And it was just like, that was a bit like Sweet tapped it very deliberately to a spot that I think the plan was, but whether, and the camera view, I didn't have enough time to go back to watch that specific one enough. And in the camera view, I couldn't see who the port player was that was trying to come off, but I assume there was a plan for a player to come through, and just whether he got locked up with his.
And maybe they were blocked.
Exactly, they were probably blocked and
Legally, of course. Yeah,
yes,
just
yeah, locked up with
the
their direct
ballet of
opponent.
stoppage.
Yeah, because they're always battling and grappling and trying to bounce off at the right time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just it is what happens. So yeah, he had the hit. He was getting the hit outs. Like we weren't, a couple of years ago, we were just getting soundly beaten in hit outs and everything else in the middle. He's winning. He had a battle with Grundy that I think he lost in some key moments. But Sweet was tied for the most centre clearances with two with Jackson Mead, I think. He had 21.
Right.
He had 21 pressure acts to Grundy's 7, so he was finding ways to impact the game in certain ways. He just got beaten in some key areas because I think Grundy led ground ball. Ground ball gets with 13, so Grundy was really important in that area as well. So they both had their wins. I think Grundy just wins overall if you're going to do a points, boxing
Yeah,
style decision. But
I think for
I think
me
he was
that's an
serviceable.
obvious call.
Yeah, he was like as you said, he was serviceable.
Yeah.
He wasn't. We won the game, and he was
He'll
out.
learn a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um.
Yeah, I think he'll learn a lot. This won't be the first time. It's certainly not the first time he's been beaten in a ruck contest, and it won't be the last. But
mhm.
what I do know is that he generally comes out the back of it a better player.
Yeah.
And like you said, and it's one thing that I admire about Jordan Sweet is that if he's losing the game on one hand, he's working to make it up on another aspect of the game where, like we mentioned before, someone like a Scott Lysett, more at the back end of his career, if he wasn't winning hit out, he was a bit of a liability in the end. So, Jordan Sweet's at a much earlier part of his career than Scott Lysett was when we keep referencing him, but it's just where we are in terms of our ruck position.
I can tell you, having been at Alberton on Friday night, and I know you watched a bit too, Ivan Soldo isn't.
Oh, yeah.
He's not going to be playing as our starting ruckman unless there's a
Ever.
yeah, I think I said to you in text from Melbourne. I'm not trying to. We'll never beat down on a player on this podcast on
No,
performance based. Like if
it's
they
not
do,
meant to be that
they do
way.
do something stupid as a human, then we'll certainly criticize. But we're certainly just as a player, like Ivan Soldo, as a human, whatever. Like he's probably, I don't have anything against him, but as a player, like watching what I did on at Alberton, he just doesn't have it as far as his round game goes. He got some ruck hit out, he got some ruck moments in the ruck, but Dante still took most. Vicentini still took most of the hit outs in the great
And
Magpies.
Dante Vicentini just holds up.
Mhm.
Like he's just the future. Everyone knows it.
Yeah,
He signed the extension. Like, yeah.
yeah.
Vicentini's one of the best ruckmen at SANFL level, and I think he has been for the last couple of years.
Mhm.
Obviously, the SANFL won't recognize him as such.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it is pretty obvious. And I watched it on 7+. You were there, like you said, and even on telecast, you're kind of going, "Oh, geez, that looks a bit grim." From a Soldo point of view.
I think I texted you and said he's got the turning circle of the Queen Mary, unfortunately, at the moment.
Yeah.
Which again sounds a little facetious, but it is just unfortunate. He just doesn't. Yeah, the game's going past him a little bit at the moment. He's out there trying, but it's just like when you're watching a team of fairly young bodies running around, moving pretty well, and Soldo just looks a little sore thumbish out there. So I hope he finds a little bit of, at least finds a little bit of fun in footy at the moment. It just doesn't look like it's all that much fun for him at the moment. And as such, it's a bit frustrating.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out for him.
Mhm.
He had, as Jared Waitley, I think, to paraphrase him from last year, the best open job role in AFL football was to be the ruckman to Rosie Butters and HORNE-FRANCIS.
Mhm.
But I think for Soldo, it's just a matter of the culmination of injuries.
Yeah. At some point, you hit that tipping point.
It happens. Yeah,
Particularly for
and
big
I think
blokes
it's
with a
part of
lot
the reason
pressure.
why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the reason why he, because wasn't it St Kilda seemed like he was going to leave and go to St Kilda, but then he did like a medical or something, or I don't even think it got that far.
I don't know what happened.
Just
it's just
grapevine stuff.
No one was interested, and that kind of says when you're clearly on the open market and ready to go back to Melbourne, where there's a lot of team, like where the one place you would just want to open yourself up to is Melbourne, obviously as a player that's looking for a trade. And no team, even teams that take a cursory...
The odds are in your favour.
Yeah,
That's your choice.
Teams that take a cursory interest go, and St Kilda is certainly a team that's looking for, players. Like, they're doing okay in the ruck department, but still could use some, maybe some... Yeah. So, unfortunately, but back to Sweet, he's clearly the best ruckman at this club at the moment. He had a great battle with Grundy. Grundy wins on points, but and Grundy certainly threatened to help win the game for Sydney, but we still won, and that's what sometimes your ruckman just has to battle, and he gets involved. There was one handball chain where a Sweet just was there. I was like, you weren't the right person to be there, Sweet, because the pressure came from Sydney quite immediately, and he just didn't have the quickness of handball, but he does. I like that he gets involved. His movement is good enough to get involved in those, and just sometimes Sometimes
and I'm still trusting him over a lot of other ruckmen in the competition. In a lot of those scenarios. I think I know when you're talking about, and it's just
one of those moments where you're just like, that's not the person that should have been there, but it's just he was there because no one else was. So it's just like he took a chance and it just didn't quite work. But
exactly right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, again, I don't know what, like, it's hard to, again, I have my criticism because I think we need to be the stoppage and the clearance game just isn't. Still, we had a good stoppage game last week, but this week, again, we got beaten in the end. But a lot of talented players, even though the likes of Heaney, Warner, etc., all were kind of, we had them in check for most of the game, and Warner's just not in great form. We still just, it was a great battle.
Seems to be playing for free kicks.
Yeah.
Chad Warner.
Yeah, just not as good at or handball or disguising handballs. Speaking of a great midfield stoppage moment, like Zach Butters the clearest of throws. I remember when I saw it live, I was like, that's a throw, and then the commentator's like, oh no, he's talented enough. He probably get a hand to it, and we talked about handball technique last week, which I thought was great. a great note to
Yeah.
bring up again, because we were just like, all you have to do is get a fist to it. And the commentator said that. And they were like, yeah, no, I'm sure when we watch it on slow-mo, you'll see that you got a fist to it. They slow it down. It's just like a fucking 3 or 4 inch gap. It's just like, oh, no, it was a throw.
It's just
Yeah, but he got away with it because that's, as you said, the rules kind of changed to that you don't have to force it. You just have to get the touch of the hand, which is great for the movement of the game, the modern game, and the athletes we have and the skills they have. I thought I can't remember someone got paid. I don't know. Who was it? There was a throw against James Jordan in the same spot. Like he was paid. We got a free kick for him getting paid for throwing the ball literally in the same spot like 2 minutes later. And I just thought that was hilarious because I was like, you could hear the Sydney crowd booing a little bit. It's just like, oh, that's great. But apart from those moments, and if you have any notes that you want to make on that, go for it, because I thought it was just very, very funny. Just very funny football things.
Oh, me too. Yeah. It was most funniest when the commentators were trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, and then mid conversation, the vision comes up and they're like, oh, no, that's a clear throw.
Yeah.
I do think there were some others that were also not paid on Sydney's behalf too. So it all comes out in the wash. Everyone gets a goal from something egregious. That just was the most egregious example on the day. And it's just kind of funny because it's Zach Butters. So it's like he's won the ground ball, he's done the hard stuff, and then he's got himself into one of those weird positions where he has been handballing it cleanly, that it's just like you're almost surprised that the players didn't stop expecting it to be called. But but one thing I do want to mention in regards to the midfield is just our young boy Christian Moraes. I thought he started well in conjunction with the team. I thought his first half was actually quite good. Got his hands on the ball. He was disposing of it adequately, I thought. What did he go at? So he finished at 60%, but I think that dropped as he fell out of the game a little bit. And I think we as a team and a club need to be just careful not to overrun him at AFL level. I have full faith and I'm extremely happy with what I've seen from him this far. But this is more of a watch that we're not, wringing the towel too dry. It might be an opportunity for a bit of management because
particularly as we get
he's a young man.
We're a little bit fitter now, and we've got players knocking on the door at the Sandful level as well. There is the opportunity to go, look, Boak's played his first, Boak didn't make his debut until mid-year in his debut year. You do need to, sometimes as a young player, even if you've made a debut early, have some time in the twos to, get just
Barry's a good example of that.
Barry's
one game.
Yeah, Barry's game was very, very good for the Maggies on Friday night. So, and he's not going to spend too much time in the Maggies if he keeps playing like that there. But we are in suddenly in a blessed position to be getting players coming back from injury more than being injured, and long may it continue, knock on wood. But I do agree. Yeah, he had some great moments. He had that moment where he kind of stole the ball off of Chad Warner's foot and started the possession that went down to the
set up a goal, I think.
It went. I can't remember what happened after. It went down to it actually ended up out of bounds in our forward half, though, like in our forward 50. And if the goal came from that stoppage, it's very possible. But what I loved about that, though, is he just takes the ball off Warner's foot and gets the handball chain going. It kicks forward. But if you like the zoomed out vision, Moraes is running on like kind of with the on the wing or in the center square line, calling for the ball. It's not coming to him, but he's calling for it. He's in position to receive. And when there's a contest that ends up going out in that forward 50, and Moraes is actually, I think the Sydney player kind of corrals it out of bounds, so to speak. And Moraes is kind of the closest one to him by the time it goes out of bounds. So he's taken the
right.
Yeah, so he's worked great to get up the field, be an option, and then and be there for the contest on the boundary. Was he's gone from the back flank to the forward 50 with the transition to play just as an option. So his work rate is really good. Had a few good handballs out of contest and extraction.
Yeah.
Again,
absolutely. Some of his disposals.
Yeah, just it was in the first half.
Some of his disposals. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And they also give you a window into the footy IQ that the young man
Mhm.
possesses. Just some of the decisions that he makes. Like I said, I have full faith in him as a football player at the top level. And it's a testament to him that since he came in as sub against Richmond, he's held his spot. And I think he's deserved to do so.
Mhm.
I just don't want to wear him out too early in the season when I think he can still contribute to a finals push
Mhm.
as we near that end of the season due to his footy IQ and his work rate, like you mentioned. So, not a watch on form, more so just a team management. Yeah, I'll be curious to see what they do in selection this week in that regard.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, Jackson Mead, just sticking with the midfield line. Jackson Mead, Willem Drew obviously didn't have a lot of the ball. He obviously had a very pronounced role on Heaney and
I think a very good
on
role. 10 tackles.
yeah,
More tackles than
10
disposals. So, like,
yeah, and pressure acts up the wazoo for
Mhm.
Willem. Um, so yeah, it's just a bit of again, interesting stat lines when you consider our midfield. Like you've spoken about the clearance numbers and all of that. And then the likes of Zach Butters, JHF's first two, 3 quarters were fantastic. Um, but then yeah, just the balance. I mean, yeah, Ollie Wines falling out just seemingly and maybe not being spoken enough about in the context of the game because it's all doom and gloom about Sydney. In the analysis of it all, yeah, that Wines omission from the rest of the game kind of hurt us. And just on Wines again, just the frustrating thing, removing all emotion and sentiment and all of that, is that when it does happen, it tends to be early in the game.
Mhm.
Like I remember it was the Hawthorn game, the DBJ LA game last year. So good thing is that it seems like a one and done, and I seriously hope, for his sake and for our sake, the club that is, that like it's happened, and odds would say it might not happen again until next year now. But yeah, it's happened at the start of games. The recent examples that it has happened, which is I'm sure very frustrating for him on a personal level.
Yeah. I think Ken
And
alluded to
yeah,
that in
just
the
wanting to
post-match press conference. He said, I think his frustration is it's happened, and in particular, he's had that procedure in the off season that was hoped to
yeah.
allay it. So that must be probably the most frustration is that like it's still there. But I'm very glad for him as a human that he understands the issue now and can self-diagnose and come off the field and has that control of his competitive spirit. Because there's some players out there that ones that want to play through a concussion or whatever, but he does have that understanding of what's going on with his body and will pull himself out of game despite the fact he is, a competitive beast and otherwise wouldn't want to be out there. He wants to be out there with the boys, but I'm glad that the way they talk about it is that it's not life threatening, and I just have to go with what they say. It's just it's a condition that causes him some immediate health strife, I guess, in the moment. And I guess it's one of those things that might get worse if he don't, like if he ignores it. So I don't. Yeah, it is the one thing. I'm just like, how is it not life threatening if it's a heart issue that pulls you out of a game? It must be just
Mm.
an uncomfortable thing. I'm not a doctor, obviously,
Well,
and I'm not going to do
I think
what
it's
some
more
people like
that
to do
yeah.
and act like I am a doctor when I'm not. I'm just gonna, So I'm just glad that he's
No,
okay.
and you can
Yeah.
can definitely get into conspiracy theory areas and stuff like that. And if that's your proclivity, then so be it. Um, Everyone's going to have their own opinion.
Mm.
The fact of the matter is, like, he is playing elite level AFL football, and even a decent heart gets strained at high intensity,
Mm-hmm.
long duration exercise. Like it's yeah, yeah, manageable when you stop doing that. But yeah, you can imagine if someone tries to push through that, that's when you're really getting
Yeah,
into some seriously concerning areas, and that's why they don't. That's why he doesn't, and that's why he comes off.
and he's available
He
this week,
has
as
some
far as we know.
meds,
So
as far as we know. Yeah, so that's just about it
yeah,
on
and
Ollie, in my opinion. But
And glad he got the job done. I'm glad the team got the job done for him. Not that obviously get it done for each other as well, but for him to go off, I'm sure it was frustrating to watch from the sidelines and have that added stress to the heart of the Sydney comeback. So I'm glad they were able to get it done for him and he was able to be amongst it. And it was great to just see him come out to the bench and chill out. Like he looked fine on the bench and just as
the same as what he did last year when it happened.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
mild.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll have a cracking game this week. Should he be assuming he's fine, and they've alluded to that as well, that he's planning to train and be available for selection as normal this week. So, yeah, hopefully we don't see it again. I expect we may, but as long as all the tests and everything come up, then his career seems to be still fine. So, forward line, interesting one this week. I think again, we were on the verge of a Mitch bag, and we just had we've talked about it, we've touched on it already, but it was just a unique game in the fact that for some reason I don't understand why, just was lunging at all those marking opportunities. As we said before, we think a couple of them should have been paid, but he had 4 1/4 that he could have marked and set up for a set shot. He still kicked 3 in the end, and incredible play overall. And again, Mitch Georgiades kicks averaged 3 goals a game for the last few weeks, and long may that continue because that's going a long way to a win, along with Willie getting 3. And
that's elite areas.
Yeah, but he could have had his 5 or 6. We want him to just start getting those 5 or 6s in there occasionally because he's clearly playing well enough to do that. And
might have a good opportunity this weekend to do that.
Yeah, yes.
I fucking hope so.
Because that defense is. Was that meme that's been going around? It was like where you screenshot the opposition team's defense and goes, anyone else licking their lips? Like,
fraught with danger.
I know
that broccoli.
But Mitch certainly probably is. But on this game, I think Power Pepper pops up with 2. Mitch and Willie get 3. Would have been nice to a few more. Late in the game, it got a little bit fraught, but, we kicked reasonably accurately, and the forward line, there was a clear plan. And to touch on it, I mentioned it earlier, there was those few that went out in the full deep into the, like Kane Farrell just fucking bulleted one that just, I think it's forgetting that there's an extra.
He pounded it, yeah.
Yeah, just forgetting
it's 5. Just go over the line. It was like meters over the line. And also, JHF had his token... like one of his token handful of poor kicking for goal games, like 2 out in the full.
Yeah. He straight up shanked him. And it just
absolute shanks. Yeah.
He is a reasonable set shot. I think actually not just reasonable. I think he's a good set shot in general. But then even last year, he's had a little
there
bit
would be that 1 or 2 games where he just he loses that hand to foot for whatever reason. And I think the commentary team were like, "Oh, yeah, they brought the wrong balls today," or something like that, or the balls aren't pumped up properly. Or
yeah, because I was talking about Malcolm Blight having a crack about balls. There's a Malcolm Blight anecdote in there somewhere.
They brought the left-footed balls, not the right-footed balls. But they again, it's all doom and gloom on Sydney's behalf because that seems to be footy media in a fucking nutshell this year, which is quite annoying. If I'm being honest, and that's to put it lightly. It's all been about how many wasted opportunities Sydney had, but bloody JHF could kick 2 shots out in the full that he would otherwise nail on 85 out of 100 other occasions, maybe 90 out of 100 occasions. So
you expect even on a bad day that it's one of them, and it's just like the fact he shanked both.
Yeah, absolutely. He
missed a reasonably easy one last week as well. So I think it's just he's just having those couple of weeks, and I'm sure
a bit of complacency in the young man. He's like a bit lazy with the ball drop, maybe. I don't know.
He certainly looked frustrated when he missed him. He was he kind of he had an eye roll to himself and a bit of a face right. Like he was frustrated. Yeah, it's just
I don't do that.
Yeah,
why did that happen?
Yeah, maybe he's having. Mitch Georgiades had that case of the yips a few years ago after he'd started well. Like maybe just. He's having a little moment of yips.
That was true yips.
Yeah.
That was consecutive weeks. I did want to bring up Willie as my spotlight for this week. I just think after the aftermath of the Hawthorn game, the week that he's had, I think he just further exemplified how important he is to our team and our forward structure, just our vibes as a whole. Ticks every box. He kicks goals at crucial stages. I love him. I love what he brings to our team. He's dazzling. He has fear factor, which we've mentioned many times before. But more so, he's kicked 3 goals. 3 goals, 1. So he's our leading scorer from a GB point of view on the day. The week that he's had, he obviously missed training on Tuesday, was it? And obviously had the shit that he had to deal with, which wouldn't be easy, but did the business. Even disposed of the ball when he had it at 71.4%, upward of 200 meters gain too. So he's doing some fair work around the ground. 8 score involvement. So not only from a GB point of view, but our highest score involvement player on the field. Really.
Yeah.
So we all know the value of Willie Rioli. I hope more people, maybe not necessarily speaking about Port fans, because I would desperately hope that Port fans know how valuable he is, but across the AFL competition, he's now had a consistent run after his suspension, like yearly suspension, that is, at West Coast. He's now had a fair, decent amount of time back in the system, and he just keeps doing the thing. He keeps doing Rioli things, and I'm very happy that we have a Rioli in our football club.
Yeah, and one that's playing as well. Then, it's like his goals are great, and he had some different great examples of goals, whether it be some marking well deep in the forward line and set shots, or just classic selling candy kind of stuff. But some of his disposal coming inside 50, like when he'd take a mark on the half forward flank or get involved in the movement game. Like again, he's actually, his disposal is quite elite at times, and how he can assist as well. And as you said, his score involvement numbers kind of reflect that as well. So he's he's a great. My watch list comes from the forward line, I guess, as well. I thought DBJ wasn't quite at the races for his game back from suspension. Not terrible. Like,
I think that there's that one chase down opportunity that I think sticks in the mind.
He got a hand. I straight up put spotlight on his name after that. I was just like, that was quite a pathetic attempt on Blakey, because he got a hand on him, on his shoulder, and just like didn't continue. Like, just it was uncharacteristic. He had being that close, he had the chance to lunge at him and just wrap his arms around him, which we've seen DBJ do.
Wrap arms around him.
I think that ended up in a goal, or at least it was a forward 50.
I think it did too, or at least a mark inside 50.
Yeah, and that was a moment that they could have got him, and Blakey's clearly one of those players that you lock in on a little bit. So he had the opportunity, but he just he did get a hand on him quite comfortably, but just didn't do much else. Kind of like he backed off his run, and there's just a few moments. He still got in position to kick a nice goal in a nice bit of transition moment, which is what you want you guys that play that position to do. They just need to be in position to kick a goal when they get the opportunity. But just don't think he was quite at the races for his game back. But I'm not gonna get too much into it. But he was my watch for the week, because I thought that was just get 1 week off with the suspension and come back and kind of put that kind of effort in a moment. And that was earlier in the game. Like sometimes in the last 10 minutes of a game where you're gassed, and again I still would want a better effort. But that was early on when we actually
we had one tackle for the whole game. Yeah. And that was one tackle inside 50.
Yeah.
From an offensive point of view, one small note that I would make is that he also had 2 goal assists.
Yeah.
His 1 goal. So
he wasn't. I think he actually.
It's like
but it's just like I was a bit disappointed with some of those efforts between the lines. That I usually
criticism is fair.
That's what rounds out a good DBJ game for me, is like when he's doing those little efforts. And then he gets involved in the goals. He gets a goal or 2 or 3 or whatever he does sometimes. Has his goal assists and score involvements, and then he rounds it out with that tough DBJ stuff. And he just missed a couple of those moments, very glaring as well. They were that unfortunate. That Nick Blakey one, I think the fucking commentators make mention of it. Even They just went, that was pretty poor. And, commentators generally won't point something out like that and replay it and it was just objectively just watching it, it didn't look good. Like if an aliens came down and that was the first moment, they'd be like, that was, if this is meant to be a physical game, as you humans are explaining it to me, that didn't look good. And that's what, it was just very, very plain to see. And again, we kind of, when we did our squad show last week, we locked in as Blakey as one of the threats, considering some of the ones they were missing. He had his he just blazed away and probably should have, picked his targets a little bit more or whatever. But so he didn't do as much damage as he threatened to do. But overall DBJ, he got his goal, a nice goal, and he got himself in position. That was a very nice transition play, diagonal kicks and whatnot to get it to DBJ in the end. And but a couple of those moments I think he'd like to have back.
Yeah, for sure. I think the criticism is fair. Yeah, it was just a very surface level DBJ game for his return after suspension. Yeah, did some really bare minimums from a goal involvement point of view, but like you mentioned, that's not what everyone is just there to do. There's more aspects, particularly a pressure forward, and particularly one of our stat leaders in tackles inside 50 from last year. So obviously that, there's that example was down the ground and you need to be putting on pressure wherever you are. So yeah, no, fair. One note, Ollie Lord provided a presence, didn't really blow the lights out. But
took his
we were
goal
laughing about Zach. He did. He positioned himself well, ran the defender under the ball, and then doubled back to take the mark. Passion up the wazoo. One observation that I made, though, we were laughing about the Zach Butters throw and whatnot. The play that eventuated after that, I think he threw it to Willem Drew, that Zach Butters, that is, and then it got kicked forward, and there was a bit of a ground ball situation where it was a bit of chaos ball. Sydney players everywhere. Ollie Lord was in the midst of it, and he put out a hand, collected the ball in traffic, and then he actually had a first option that was close, but he held for a half a second and then handballed it further out laterally to space, which I think then came in for a goal opportunity. Can't remember who finished that piece of play up, but that piece of play and his involvement in it just, for me, gives a bit of a window into why Ollie Lord is worth persisting at AFL level, persisting with at AFL level, I should say. Not that I don't think there's any real argument about that. I'm sure maybe the most negative of fans could probably look at his stat line and find some criticisms there.
I did see one on Twitter that said, like, what the fuck does Ollie Lord provide? And I just didn't even get into it, but I was just like, there is a lot there.
Yeah.
It is very
surface level because everyone, as we know, everyone should get 25 disposals, have 8 tackles a game, and just everyone should do the same thing because everyone has the same role, don't they, Dave?
Yes, yeah. Reminds me of
I say facetiously.
Reminds me of a friend, and I think I told you guys this story on Gather at Lindock about a friend. My dear friend Vince and his wife Brittany, who's also my dear friend, her assertion at NBA games. We were at a game, the Trailblazers. I think it was when Lillard went off for his 71 points. But free throws were happening and players were missing free throws, and she just said, she's not really an NBA fan. She just said, these guys are getting paid like, 5, 10, 20 million. Like, they should make every free throw ever. Like, I was like, Brittany, it doesn't really work that way. She's like, I don't fucking care. Like, they should be making them all. I am frustrated watching this. It's very, very funny. I love them both like dearly. They're like family to me. But I've just always remember like that conversation is her being like, I don't fucking care. They should make them. And like, there's a part of me that goes, like, she's not wrong, but she's also is wrong. And I'm like, it's frustrating to have that conversation. So, yeah, but the games are played in different ways. There's different conditions to every game. And Ollie Lord, this game was a very back and forth game, lots of forward 50 entries and whatnot. But, like, it was tight as well. And Lord, they did defend okay. And Lord obviously takes a bit of, but your point to his skills and what they're persisting with, like we saw it last week with your Goal of the Week nomination with with the gather and handoff he had for Jackson Mead to run in. that was brilliant. That's handles and skills that you expect from your midfield players, but that's a tall forward
Yeah,
gathering and dishing off a quick handball. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. He's and yeah, he took his he didn't have too many opportunities for goal this week, but he took the opportunity quite well. So some of those criticisms of early Ollie Lord, and he still misses a set shot here and there, but I think he's worked on it, and he certainly some of those runs around from the corner, like it's kind of like the Sam Draper thing, like he's almost like his
whatever
technique
gets the
around.
job done.
Yeah, his technique when it's on the angles is actually reasonably good as long as he's close enough into goal for like kind of the bend and how it works. So yeah, I was it wasn't a big game from Lord, but he provided the presence, and I don't think Mitch Georgiades is getting as much space if Lord isn't in there with him. So that's sometimes the role
I
that they
agree.
play with the first and second forward, whichever one is getting. And Mitch Georgiades is clearly a bit of a unit, got a bit of unicorn stuff about him as to what he can do as a forward, both as whether he plays as a medium forward or he plays as the leading big forward that he can do. You know,
Mhm.
he's not getting as much space if Lord isn't taking the attention, because Lord does demand attention just based on his size and his marking ability, and
Size, yeah,
yeah, he
yeah,
moves
exactly.
reasonably well as well. So he does demand attention, which you need guys sometimes. It's rare that you can have. I mean, I know Carlton have had Mackay and Kerno, but actually having two guys that can be that big and both kick bags consistently is
And
very
nimble.
rare these days. Like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
sorry, yeah.
yeah. Sometimes you need one will kick the goals, the other one may get a goal or two, but sometimes take a little bit of attention, and they work in tandem, and ultimately it's worked the last few weeks. It worked against St Kilda, just not quite enough because of other factors in that game. But it worked against Hawthorn. It's worked this week enough for us to get the win. So, and
Hmm.
he's still an incredibly young player, developing as a tool, and there's lots of development to come, hopefully. So, yeah,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's why I wanted to emphasize. It's just, and I'm sure the coaches are looking at it. Like, of course, from a ratings point of view, he's down the bottom rung, and yeah,
yeah,
you'd love everyone to get a bit more of the ball and do a little bit more here and there. But there's elements of his game that show that, with experience, an opportunity, he can offer multiple facets,
yeah,
that's worth persisting with. So yeah.
yeah. No, absolutely. Do you have any other notes on the forward line, or
No, no. I guess this is going back on a holistic point of view, but with the nature of us trying to protect a lead, our forward movement just fell in a heap
yeah,
late, and like there were stages where we were haphazard with our movement, but also trying to defend with the ball. We came in half cocked, and I just think that we could have kept it what was gaining us ascendancy for longer.
mm,
And sure, Sydney were always going to ramp up their pressure and their work rate trying to chase a win, but there was still enough talent out there to stick to our game plan. And people have commented on fitness, and that's because unfortunately there's a trend over the first six rounds. We haven't won a fourth quarter yet.
mm,
And look, Australian rules football is a real life example of chaos theory, but there is a trend there. So that's one thing. But in saying that, I still think there was enough talent on the field to stick to what was working for the better part of three quarters, particularly the first two quarters, instead of being haphazard with our forward movement and, you know, just either not working it forward quickly enough, playing into Sydney's hand, or just again bombing it to fucking nothing. When a forward mark and particularly the conversion of our goal kicking on the day, like our forwards were on an accurate heater,
yeah,
like
yeah,
so keep. It's a very easy to say, but I did think we let ourselves down from a decision making and game plan point of view late, trying to protect a lead. When I think, yeah, if we just stuck at what we were doing well for a bit longer, keeping our forwards involved, which just takes a lot more pressure off us at the end there. And yeah, the forwards were left wanting
Yeah.
in that last quarter. They just fell out of the game because they were stuck with no genuine supply.
Yeah, so that old adage that the best form of defense is attack, which is a very binary way, and it's not completely true.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember talking to you about that. When Liverpool played West Ham last week, and we were defending poorly. West Ham finally got a goal, and then we immediately attacked, and then found our way through to a goal from a court. Like, not
That's right. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
It's just like we
But
actually
when you
just
need
went.
to do the thing,
Yeah, when we needed to do the thing, we did it, and yeah, it's just like very frustrating to watch them try to hold the lead before that. So, yeah, it's
yeah.
not it is like there's a push and pull to it, but yeah, it's just we need to find that balance a little bit better, which hopefully will come, and at least we're getting the wins now, because that was the most frustrating thing of previous weeks was we weren't even getting the wins, but now we're starting to get
Well, yeah, I thought we did this exact thing in the Essendon game,
yeah.
and yeah, they got on a heater and they benefited from it. We
Yeah. And
didn't get
I
the
mean, speaking of the
chocolates.
last quarters thing, like I
So,
think we actually played a reasonable last quarter against St Kilda until they just broke forward, and
yeah,
they did
we
the
lost it
thing.
by a point in that
Yeah,
game.
yeah. And I think that was unfair to lose it by a point.
The quarter, that is.
Yes, yeah, yeah. No, I know what you mean. Because they one of the shows brought that up. But yeah, no. Hopefully, look, we're getting the wins, and ultimately, hopefully this week will be another one, which we'll talk about briefly in a moment. But before we get to the awards and stuff, I just wanted to make a brief note. Obviously, there was the Aaliyah incident with the fan, which
Oh, yeah.
bit of. I just wanted to ask your opinion, because there's lots of takes on Twitter, and I think I just put my one thought out there was just everyone needs to cool their jets on it a little bit, because we just need to let it play out. Because my immediate fear when I saw it was, oh God, I hope it wasn't racial. But then the immediate replays showed someone immediately regretting their actions. You could see who I assume was the mum of the kid giving him a bake already. Lots of stuff has come out, whether it be the guy that was apparently related bringing 3AW. I don't know what to think about that, but
Yeah.
but you had people asking for a life ban immediately. I just my opinion on it, I'll just give it for a minute, and then I'll let you say what you want on it, and whether you agree or not is up to you. But I think you need to have a significant baseline for any of these events, because it's over the top. You can't just because I think Eddie and Jimmy Bartell kind of said, "Oh, geez, I think he's gotten a 2-year ban." That's where that is for me. I think you need to have a baseline that every incident like this that a player feels the need, because that whatever he threw hit Aaliyah, and Aaliyah probably in that immediate moment felt a little bit of a threat, and that's why Aaliyah had his word with him. I think if an event like that happens, it has to be a year at least, just because you have to have a significant baseline to discourage the behavior ever. You can't just treat it case by case and go, oh, that's 3 weeks, that's 2 weeks. You have to, for fan behavior with players, you have to have a significant baseline. Saying that, I think this was on the lighter end, and 2 years is probably 1 to 2 years. I was going to be like, whatever. The kid hopefully will learn. The kid's going to have to learn from it. The embarrassment that is going to come just from the vision of it for him is significant, and I do hope his mental health is okay, because it is hard to be in the public eye in that way. So
Especially as a kid,
yeah, he'll get baked from some.
like you aren't prepared for the criticism that comes your way at that age.
Exactly. Yeah. So I hope everyone's around him and taking care of him, because he will be regretting being in that moment. And as fans, we all it is this push and pull of sports fandom is like they do encourage passion, and TV was loving all the Port fans doing the plane stuff last week, and that is a form of passion. And then sometimes passion gets metabolized in a negative way when you're in a moment at a game as well. We've all probably had moments, and I know I've had moments where I'm like, geez, I maybe towed the line there a bit too closely, and I'd like to take that back with words that escaped my lips, and luckily they didn't call.
Yeah.
So he got himself in a high profile moment. Unfortunately, being on the fence, he has to take his licks with the 2-year ban that it is. Whatever you think, but I think people calling for life bans for those kind of incidents, I think you have to have the significant baseline, and then from there you dictate based on what the actual facts are. And I think what's come out is like it was just a moment with maybe some foul language, but nothing unscrupulous to the point of bigotry. And he just had a bad moment as a kid. Aaliyah, I assume, I don't know if Aaliyah's actually spoken on it much, but I assume Aaliyah just kind of had a word with him about his just the thing that hit him, which probably in that immediate moment, as I said, felt like a threat, and we move on. But I just hate the pile-on that happens on social media afterwards. People immediately going, life ban, kick him out, like he should never go to a game again. I'm like, no, if it's kind of like if you get caught speeding, doing 20 Ks over, but you just got caught speeding, you take your licks, you take your fine, demerit points, whatever. If you do 20 Ks over and hit someone, and then that's a bad, unfortunately, that's worse, and you'll get your, criminal sanctions and whatever. If he'd done something worse in that moment, then he'd get those sanctions for that. But from what I understand, is essentially he just got caught speeding. He's going to get a little bit of a penalty for that, and that's it. And thankfully, hopefully, he'll learn from that and go, geez, I got close to a line that would have probably been bad. I didn't go quite over that one, but I've gone enough that I do get a little whack on the, whack on the wrist, and I move on and hopefully be a better person from it. And we all move on. And life bans for that kind of thing, I just think is a bullshit narrative to ever bring up. And let the facts come out. If he'd said worse and whatever, and some of those other more nasty things we've had to experience in the past with players, yeah, sure, talk about it then. But from what we know, like a life ban should never have been on the table from some of the people out there that talk about it. So,
yeah, can't disagree with a lot of what you said. I can become a little bit ugly in portions of spectatorship within football games. Never to the point of throwing things or. Oh, the fact of the matter, he didn't mean to throw it. Like, he didn't mean to let go, should I say? He meant to make the gesture.
Yeah.
And the clapper fell out of it. The cardstock clapper fell out of his hand. And like you said, Aaliyah bending over to get the ball would have felt threatened initially. But yeah, definitely been young and dumb before. The kid's a kid. And it is important to differentiate actions done by minors versus actions done by adults. But yeah. Cop his whack, move on.
Yeah.
Sydney spoke with Aaliyah. Sydney spoke with Football Club. Port Adelaide, that is. Yeah. That's that. Like I mentioned before, that kid's face is going to be up. I'm sure anyone who doesn't like him at school is going to let him know about it. Yeah. A moment that he'd like back, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you make decisions in life and you have to live with them. And acknowledging that it was an accident for him to let it go, even if he had held on to it, the gesture still would have been close enough to be like, hey, that's too close to comfort. And like Ken said afterwards, like, you pay your money to go watch, just watch the players do their thing. Like, it's as simple as that. Just let players play the game that you love watching. Be passionate, but yeah, there's a line there. We don't need to cross it. And if you do, like you said, you get your penalty.
Yeah. And yeah, whatever the penalty is, worse based on the individual event. But yeah, we should have the ability as a league and as a fandom to differentiate events rather than just shout life ban anytime something happens. So yeah, that's all I had to say on it. I just thought it would be remiss if we didn't at least touch on it because it was a major storyline out of the game. So, but yeah, hopefully the kid's doing good, and I think Aaliyah's fine. We move on to the segments. And of course, we start with the Wilson Gray.
Down, Gray doing brilliantly, getting through to Monfries. That's Gray at his best.
Wilson kicks hard and kicks cruelly.
Alrighty, Wilson Gray Award, which I get to go first this week, but just a note, last week's winner was Jamie's nomination of the centre clearance brilliance. That was a beautiful Zach Butters, Jason HORNE-FRANCIS moment that ended up in, was that Mitch Georgiades' goal, I believe?
Mitch Georgiades, yeah.
Yes, but a beautiful moment. And the more I watched it, sometimes when I do the nominations and then I'd see Jamie's, I just sit there and go, no, Jamie's needs to win, and I'm glad it did. Like, if it had come to a tie break, I think I would have... Because I think I mentioned this last year, but just for the note, like I don't utilize my vote unless there's a tiebreak needed. And I think there was once last year when a tiebreak was needed and I actually voted for Jamie's pick because I was like, no, that was better. So I can't remember the particular one, but I do remember voting for Jamie's once.
I can't either.
Yeah. So, but it wasn't needed this week, his one comfortably. For this week for me, though, I mentioned, I think I started talking about this earlier and I backed off because I knew I was going to nominate it. Lockie Jones in the third quarter had this moment where Braden Campbell got over the back of him for a moment on the wing and kind of looked like he was going to break, but Jones recovered really well. So he kind of lost the contest as a marking contest, but then he recovered and Braden Campbell took off to kind of, inboard to kick, and just Lockie Jones just closed him down and caught him holding the ball.
Campbell the target, Jones there with him. Ball bounces awkwardly and Campbell nicked it. Needs to give it off, he's gone. Jones's tenacity was outstanding.
Which was a fantastic moment, and that's actually what ultimately ended up in the DBJ goal that we talked about a little bit, just back when we were talking about the forwards.
Right,
that holding the ball, ended up in the transition that went down the field for DBJ to score. So it was actually a very, very important moment, right when I think that broke the 3-goal run that Sydney were on at that point. And so it came from a moment, I think the commentators even mentioned, kind of said, look, this was a moment that Sydney looked like they were going to go forward for another one, and Lockie Jones catches him, gets him holding the ball, and ultimately ends up in a goal that helps us get a little bit of a foothold back in that quarter. So, great Lockie Jones moment from what I think was a very, very good Lockie Jones game.
Yeah, obviously going to be my first. That one stood out for me. Awesome moment. And it was just that contrast between a mistake and then the correcting of fortunes, just never giving up on the contest, which is admirable. So great shout. Mine is a moment in a similar vein. It was in the second quarter. On the wing, Chad Warner gets the ball out the edge of a stoppage along the boundary and is running full pelt, but also Willem Drew right there behind him doesn't give up on the contest. Gets his arm around him. I'm not sure if that would be constituted as a tackle, but let's just call it a tackle. Runs him down enough to affect a kick out on the full on the wing, and
just much faster than their Swans opposition.
Warner gets away this time, but Drew stuck to the task. And that kind of sums up what we were talking about.
Sydney at that point were only on 1-2, 1-3 still. Just a good first half moment when we were really just establishing our dominance in the second quarter.
Yeah, I do remember that one. The commentators really were like, geez, he just does enough. And it was a great moment too. And that's kind of what I was really frustrated, like talking back to the DBJ, Blakey one. It was just like, just need to do something. Do something.
Don't think.
Do. But that is a great one to nominate because it was just those little fine margins of the game in that first half. Because, Sydney were trying. Their disposal was poor, and it was partly, as we talked about at the start of the episode, it was perceived pressure at times because we were just close, getting the tackles in, and if it wasn't tackles, it was just pressure on the ball carrier. So, and Willem Drew was a great exponent of that on the night too. So, love that one
definitely
as a nomination. All right, let's get to the goal of the week.
Monfries has kicked a goal. Unbelievable. Haven't seen anything like that. It's gone at right angle.
Flashpoint, Stevie Modloff, what a time! Oh! He is floating on air now!
I just want to go back to that moment on the hill when that Stevie Modloff goal went through and I got drowned in beer. Anyway, goal of the week. Last week's winner was, and Jamie will get to go first in a moment, but last week's winner was Miles and Miles and Miles. Obviously, Miles Bergman's great goal from outside 50, set up by Jason. I was about to say Jason HORNE-FRANCIS, but it's Jace Burgoyne that marked it and handballed off for a classic outside 50 Miles Bergman goal. No one else has ever done that for us in the last few years. I don't remember anyone else doing that. It's all about Miles Bergman and Kane Farrell these days. Anyway, that's what won last week. Jamie, you get to go first.
And Connor Rosie.
Yeah, Connor Rosie as well.
Yes.
Yes. Anyone that's not Han Dustin is what I'm saying.
Who dat?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. My goal, thankfully going first, is the Willie, my spotlight in this week's episode from a game point of view, but yeah, also the selling candy and then slotting the goal.
Malcolm with a fist, picked off by Boak. Handball Rioli, sells the dummy, straightens up and nails it.
These are the things that we live for.
Mm-hmm.
Willie Rioli, just doing Rioli things, making look opposition defenders look absolutely silly, slotting goals. That's why we love him.
Absolutely. I think it was Riley Bice that was the one that just bit on the candy and Rioli had a sail and he just
went off for broken ankles.
Yeah. A very, very easy finish in the end, but it was the work that led up to it. And still it's kind of a set shot on the run, so to speak, the way he finished it. But he's clearly an incredible finisher. I think we've talked about it at times, his set shot, whether it's set shot or open play. He can do it all. So, yeah, no, that was going to be my nomination as well. That was top of my list. But I think you'll be okay with who I pick. It's Willem.
Grundy and Sweet. Sweet gets a swing at it. Whacks it inside 50. Burne-Jones to Drew for the ideal start. The ideal start!
Started it.
yeah.
I had to go.
I was thinking, should I go the Willem double?
You made a point of it earlier. The timing of our start of the quarter goals was really good, and I think Port social media posted it today that it was 9.93 seconds from the start of the quarter through to the sailing for the big sticks. But a great, fortuitous centre clearance because it did come from a bounce that probably was borderline of being called back.
I forgot to mention that. We're not getting a lot of recalled bounces, are we?
There's really a couple in this one, but they almost let a couple go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they have to be really egregious. Whereas I think something like that, and there was many other occasions where last year and the year before, they definitely would have got recalled. And I don't know if it's a directive or an ego thing, but there's definitely a lot more flow on from average bounces.
Yeah, which we benefited from that one, but that doesn't take away from the work afterwards because it was kind of a sweet hits it forward. And might have been DBJ actually that kind of got in there and got the handball off quickly for Willem that was kind of running through from the centre bounce and kicks it, has a very nice finish. He's got a goal the last few weeks. So if he can add that into his game a little bit more, I don't think he's ever going to be the goal scoring midfielder, but he's going to be in the midfield more. He's going to get those opportunities and he's taken them. And
it's
that was
a two-way tagger thing.
Yeah,
you need to keep offering other things as a tagger.
And it was actually quite a low disposal game for him because he only had the nine touches, but he's getting a goal from that and getting the 10 tackles and restricting the influence of Isaac Heaney, then, that's a great game for me from him. So that goal was just low-hanging fruit, really. If Willie was going to be my pick, but there was a few, like Rosie's set shot from just outside 50 in the first quarter was a real good captain's goal moment for getting downfield and getting that one because he was getting a bit of attention.
Yeah, the two snaps from the pocket are also worthy honourable mentions. Georgiadis to snap it in and Tommy Cochran from the pocket as well. Both classy goals.
Yeah, Dwayne Russell doing that. They've been practicing that. I think it was him that did. I can't remember. Good Dwayne game again. Not like classic, but he had some moments. Did Dwayne. A really good couple of nominations there. I'm looking forward to seeing which one tugs at the heartstrings of the voters out there. And shout out to everyone that's been voting. It's been the voting's been strong on Instagram, which I'm just going with Instagram now because Twitter, I don't know if it just doesn't get out there for people, but Instagram voting's been very, very strong. So for those listening, just make sure you jump on the Instagram stories, which I get them up on the Wednesday evening. So the episode drops in the morning. I get the package up of these nominations on.
I had a little cruise around Instagram last week, and really appreciate the engagement there from people. On that platform, a lot more than I anticipated for some reason, which I don't know why. Probably because I live on Twitter. Just wanted to thank the people for chucking in their votes, reacting to the posts and everything else involved.
We're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. Facebook as well. But
Facebook, yeah.
Instagram just as a visual medium does seem to work well, and people, the stories as a voting option, it's just a lot easier than Twitter. Just doesn't get the traction, which is because idiots run the platform now, so that's what happens. So but yeah, no, I really appreciate the strong voting on Instagram and the replies too. I know friend of the pod Timmy Nash replied his opinions on the nominations last week, which I appreciated as well. So feel free to reach out, whether it be reply to the stories. I'll always reply to them and say good day if you have any opinions on them, and just engage. It's great. We're a Port fan community, and that's why we do this, is to engage with the community. So appreciate it all.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to the votes so we can start wrapping this one up. Really excited.
Lay the sting.
Oh yeah, Jamie loves this one.
Now it's time for the CreedCast Player of the Year voting.
So there's part of me that wants to re-record that to make it so I don't have to hear my voice break every week, but then I don't want to.
Player of the Year.
Well, then if I re-record it and I keep fucking it up, it's just going to get worse and I'll overthink it. So I'm I just have to stick with it for now.
It's going to have to wait now.
Because Jamie likes it. I get to go first on votes anyway. Votes. Which it was an interesting week this week, because it wasn't there was obviously a few standouts, but the lower down the vote rankings was really difficult to me for me to find where they sit. And certainly I'm going to make an honorable mention. I actually almost got him in there, but Lockie Jones, I was thinking about getting into the one spot, didn't quite get him there.
Me too.
Mitch Georgiades didn't get in there, but maybe should have. I don't know, but this is just part of this game. You have to lock it into 5 people that go 1 through 5. So to start with my one vote, we've talked about him a bit, and certainly his stats have come up already on the podcast. Willie Rioli got into the one vote. I just thought a small forwards game, 14 disposals, 7 marks, 3 goals, 8 score involvements. He had 3 clearances around the stoppage, 71% disposal efficiency, 15 pressure acts like that. Get me a small forward that does that every week, and you've got me borderline an All-Australian small forward, or that will be an All-Australian small forward if you're doing that every week. And Willie Rioli, I think, is underrated still. Maybe it's in the AFL media because of past transgressions, which again make weed legal, and it's not an issue anyway. But his performances are just incredible, and that stat line, when I read that, I was like, I have to get him in the vote somehow, because that's just for what his role is. That's exactly what you want from him. Do that every week, and I'm going to be fucking stoked with Willie Rioli in my team, as I already am. I think he's had a great period of time in the Port Jumper since the start of last year. He's been great, apart from his time out with injury, which was nothing that he could do anything about. So, Willie Rioli in my 1 spot. Jason Horne-Francis in the 2 spot. I think he was bordering on probably being higher, but I think you mentioned earlier, he kind of just couldn't find his way into the game in that last 30 to 40 minutes, I guess, of gameplay. He got into the 2 spot. I think he was still quite a strong game and had his moments that kind of did damage. He had that one moment where he just couldn't get tackled. I think he was just getting grabbed around the waist and the player just slipped off and he was able to get a goal.
I fucking love that. Oh, I have that in my notes. And that set up the rosy goal.
Yeah, that's the one. I was trying to think of which. I knew it was a goal, but I couldn't remember which one. But yeah, I fucking love that he just has a moment every week that in my rewatch notes or my watch notes, as it was this week, because I was watching, on an away game, I have a moment where I just all caps in my notes is, you can't tackle him. Happened last week, and it's happened this week, and it's happened a few weeks. So not the great Jason Horne-Francis stat line. He certainly was missing. If he'd kicked those couple of goals, he might have got higher, but I just think that kind of took it. Yeah. But 20 disposals, 9 marks, some great big marks. He had the 7 inside 50s and 6 score involvements. He still was very, very involved in the game, probably just a shade off of his very, very, best. And that's why he gets in the 2 spot rather than the top 3. Got 3 spot, got Kane Farrell, 26 disposals, 11 marks, 7 rebound, 57 intercept possessions, 809 meters gained. Oh, by the way, Jason Horne-Francis had over 600 meters gained. I don't have it actually written there, but
he did,
meters gained game. Kane Farrell had the 4 score involvements. The Willie Rioli goal you nominated, I'm watching that back. Kane Farrell's kick inside 50 just swung like just like a
It
fucking
swung in. Yeah.
it swung in. So it was just like a horrible kick for a defender to try to read. So it comes to the contest in there and ends up in the Rioli goal.
Yeah.
I love that.
They shined up the side. Nice.
Exactly. I was thinking, I was trying to think of the right cricket analogy because I was just like, it's just swinging in there. So just a great kick that got, because it gonna just, it makes it unpredictable for the defenders to work with, and ultimately ends up in a great Rioli goal. So, but yeah, just a great Kane Farrell game. I think one of his better in a Port jumper, and he certainly had plenty of good ones at this point. But it was a really, really influential game. Again, who is Han Dustin? My 4 spot, I've gone with Connor Rozee. He had a bit of attention in this one, but still played well. I think, unfortunately, I think maybe getting moved onto the ball didn't just keep him behind the ball at the moment for me. But 27 disposals, 7 intercept possessions. He was going at 70%, a massive 825 meters gained. Like the meters gained in this for a couple of players in this game was unreal. He had the captain's goal. Even though his pressure rack numbers aren't quite as big since he's been moved behind the ball, he still has 18 in this game, with 14 of them being defensive half pressure racks. So he's going to influence changes on the game, but he's still having an incredible influence on the game regardless of where he is. So I think it was a great, not like a classic Rosie game, but I think a very good one, considering it was a bit of a different game as far as the positioning goes and some of the attrition we had to deal with. Obviously, that leaves the 5 spot, and it's no contest. I think I had Butters locked in there immediately after the game. 27 disposals, 85% efficiency, 17 contested, 5 marks, 8 tackles, 7 clearances, 6 of those from stoppage. We didn't have too much fun with anyone from the centre, but he was really elite around the stoppage. He had 8 intercept possessions. He had 37 pressure acts. He had the 10 ground ball gets, which was our one player in the top 10 players on the field, the rest of them being Sydney players, obviously. He was second best on ground behind Grundy. So he just did a bit of everything, like the pressure acts, the ground balls, the clearances, the contested possessions, all those areas that we were a little bit down in, he wasn't down in. So he was a bit of a lone hand in that aspect, but he influenced the game in every possible way that he could. 6 score involvements and almost 400 meters gained himself, which looks low compared to the massive numbers of others. But for almost 400 meters gained is a decent effort still. So he was clearly best of field for me after the game, and once I saw the numbers, it backed it up for me as well.
And a partridge in a pear tree. Yeah, name any stat Zach's definitely featuring, that's for sure. Great votes. I also agreed when you mentioned your honorable mention. Lockie Jones is definitely featuring in my consideration, as we've spoken about at length. My 1 vote, I've given JHF. I've dropped him down just because I know that he's going to be higher most times this season, for the reasons that you gave. He also, one thing that I have appreciated the last couple of weeks is he had 5 tackles, which is 3rd best for Port Adelaide. So when he copped a bit of criticism in the start of his career as a whole, to be fair, and the start of this season is kind of his defensive efforts. It's been nice to see him. Even I mentioned that one against Rowan Marshall versus St Kilda, just really impeding his run. Wanted to note that because I think it's important to just give him his flowers there. But he got the 1 vote because I'm giving a reparations 2 votes to Aaliyah because I keep giving him a 1 vote, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, Aaliyah deserved more than that, in my opinion. A 1 vote, that is. So he gets the 2 votes. But we mentioned him earlier in our defensive wrap. He 95% time on ground. His disposal is in the high 90s. His intercept marking, 445 meters gained. Like I said, I think 9 intercept possessions, 3 of those intercept marks, that is. I think he's seriously in All-Australian consideration up until this point in the season. I did mean that
he was in my honorable mentions as well. I meant to mention him too. So he was a tough. I kind of had a little bit of trouble trying to find one of those ones to stick in there. I went with Rioli, but Aaliyah is often stiff to miss because of other performances.
Yeah, Rioli was definitely my consideration, and feel bad to leave him out because, like you mentioned, for his role, I think your votes are justified. But yeah, like I said, Aaliyah deserves a few reparations, just an extra vote.
Mhm.
Because I've had him languishing then down at the one vote whenever he's featured for me. So my 3, 4, and 5 is exactly the same as you, though. I thought, yeah, like I've mentioned in the breakdown, one of Farrell's best games, and particularly for this season, just ticking every box, intercept marks, intercept possessions, meters gained, inside 50s, yeah, score involvements, the whole shebang. Rosie, Butters, for all the things that you mentioned. Yeah. That, yeah, Rosie is a man reborn. And actually, what I wanted to make note of is that he is, albeit the 2 fantastic games he started the season with in the midfield, and then the 2 lull games, now the 2 games at half back, he's actually third, equal second on the coaches' votes in the AFL at the moment. So something to, yeah. So Nick Dacos is on 29 votes, outright leader. And then Jordan Dawson, Hugh McCluggage, and Connor Rosie are on 28. So it's still tight there. Obviously, 6 rounds in. One thing as well, just going down the leaderboard, is Zach Butters is already starting to feature on the coaches' votes leaderboard, which, yeah, is no real surprise, but just humorous in itself. But yeah, just the Connor Rosie point, just a testament to the start of his year that he's actually had, albeit with a little bit of criticism.
Yeah, some unwarranted criticism from both, sometimes media, but sometimes just couch coaches as well, that like to question.
Potatoes.
Yeah, no, I love those votes. I love that you got a Lear in there. It is hard sometimes with some of those players that you just love their performance every week, but you just kind of don't forget them out of a vote time. But you just like, I don't know, but yeah, no, that's love those votes.
Well, these are personal votes, and it's, yeah, the 1 and 2 spots generally are just like who you want to just give some flowers to.
Yeah.
And then the 3, 4, and 5 it's generally the best 3 players on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. Which
yeah,
I love. I do love
where...
Farrell getting into those votes this week.
Yep.
And beating someone like JHF.
Well, I think though that order was the coaches' votes as well. Butters, Rosie, and Farrell.
I did share them on Instagram earlier, but I really didn't look much past Butters getting a perfect 10. I remember looking at the others briefly, but I just was like, Butters got a perfect 10, which is fair enough too, which is great to see.
Yeah, I think it was Butters got a perfect 10, Rosie got a perfect 8, Farrell got a perfect 6.
Right,
in terms
so they
of
basically both coaches read it the same way we did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then it was 2-2-1-1, and they were all Sydney players.
Yep. Yeah, no, fair enough too. We could coach, apparently. Anyway, no, I'm very, very, very facetious. Alrighty, let's let's have a quick look ahead now to North Melbourne. We're gonna as mentioned last week and a little bit, and Patreon listeners, thank you. We're gonna keep more of our in-depth preview to the squad show on Thursday now, because we're doing that now and kind of just doing more of. Helps separate the week, helps we do lock in a little bit more to the squads later in the week, whereas at this point of the podcast we're usually getting a little bit tired, so we just want to do a quick.
It's all conjecture.
Yeah, so and at this point, yeah, the preview is, it's easier to talk about the squad once it's actually more in front of us. So yeah, it's going to be more of a look ahead to North Melbourne this week, which is Anzac Round. And yeah, get around the Patreon, patreon.com/the Creed 1870. Sign up on the website, use the URL, do not use the Apple app. The Apple app will charge you more just to give money to Apple. So use the URL, which is patreon.com/the Creed 1870. But yeah, North Melbourne ahead, Anzac Round, which I think is a great round. I've got the Rover of Tobruk poster in the background, which shout out to those guys that made that little documentary, which is a great moment at the ground a few years ago when they played that ahead of the game. I don't know if they do that still, but hopefully they do. I think that's a good thing.
No, I don't know. I don't think I've been there early enough to catch it if they do.
Yeah, I think there's probably some rights things maybe to continue to do that, but it was a great moment to be a part of that playing. And obviously Port Adelaide takes great pride in having a home game every Anzac Round. And there's good reason for that with our, being a club that has existed for since before Australia was even
Several wars.
Yes, for all of the wars. And we've had some, great players also be great, great combatants on the battlefield. Not to get into the weeds of what war means, but some Port Adelaide players have really held themselves well in those conditions that unfortunately geopolitics of the world get us into as humans at times. But it's a great Port Adelaide takes great pride in the Anzac round and having a home game every round for it. And we get North Melbourne this year. Kane Farrell's 100th game. Looking like a max of 22 on the day, partly cloudy. So hopefully it's starting to get into, by the way, I was driving around today in the Barossa. It's cold, but it's sunny. It's that beautiful autumn, proper footy weather now. And it's looking like it'll be a nice day for it this week, but like a proper cooler Saturday game rather than the heat we dealt with 2 weeks ago at Gather Round. But I'm really excited just for the day. Before we get into the injury lists and all that stuff, how are you feeling in general?
I feel good. I think that we're in a perfect spot to put a team that is in dire straits to the sword and continue their pain. It's a kind of a theme for me in footy seasons is not being the team to turn around another team or player's form, and this is no exception to that. North Melbourne are a basket case, and I do not want them to come within a sniff of a 6-goal win.
Yep.
Or, 6-goal loss, I should say, on their behalf.
Yeah. No, their average score conceded is fucking horrible at the moment. With how our forward line is continuing to improve. And as we talked about before, I kind of alluded to it before. I think I kind of mentioned just being excited for future prospects of what our forward line can do. And this was the game I was looking at. And it's not to be, I don't want to, I don't think any North Melbourne fan will listen to this. It's not like I'm being disrespectful, but I think you as any North Melbourne fan that is, of reasonable sound mind would agree that they're not in a good spot as far as their ability to defend their defensive 50 from a heavy barrage of score, and we should be looking to exploit that pain. That's what you need to do as a football club, whether or not we think we're a grand final chance. We definitely think we should be battling for a final spot. So teams like North Melbourne are the teams that you can build percentage and beat comfortably and not have to deal with the shit we've dealt with the last couple of weeks with comebacks. Just beat them. Carlton, who've had a rough trot as far as the second half team goes, they built their lead comfortably. In
the second half. Yeah, it was deplorable on North Melbourne's behalf.
I was listening to that final quarter on the way my way home from work on that Good Friday. I just heard the commentator say they've got 9 goals straight from 12 inside 50 entries in that last quarter, something stupid like that. I can't really think that might have been the stat. It was just insane. Like they were just walking through it. It was
I've got it up here.
It was a cakewalk.
Yeah, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, they kicked 9 goals for the quarter. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it was very early because it kind of tapered off towards the end, but they just went bang, 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 bang from basically almost every entry was a goal. And it's just North Melbourne wilted. So we need to, I'm not expecting us to win by 100 points or whatever, but we should be looking at a Richmond-esque game where we get out and continue to build. And then whatever may come. But if they're anywhere closer than 7, 8 goals at the end of the day, and we haven't had any if there's any injury attrition or whatever, those are those intangibles we can't predict. But if everything's gone well on the day, we should be winning this one comfortably. If we have one of those games where we kick 15 goals, 25, then that's just part of it, and I'd be disappointed. But we should be having a dominant day of scoring shots, and then that should hopefully predicate at least a 10 goal win. And I will be bullish in that. I think that's what we should be expecting to do with. And as we get into the injury list in the moment, we're getting fitter. We're not getting, we're a team that is finally starting to find some luck in the injury list. So we should be winning this quite comfortably. Looking like a good day for footy. Won't be much moisture around. It's a mid-afternoon game. best time of the day to play as far as temperature goes and everything like that. So yeah, they should be looking to comfortably win. That's how I see it. I just can't see any other scenario. And if I am stressed out in the last quarter, at any point in the last quarter, that will be a failure for me. Like, we just shouldn't be stressed in the last quarter.
No, and a good opportunity to buck that trend from the first 6 rounds where we haven't won a last quarter. But in saying that, and it's a comment and a thought that I had post Sydney, is that I'd still prefer to have a better first half than a second half. I'd still prefer to come out the blocks hard. If I have to make a choice, that is. But yeah, a great opportunity to win a fourth quarter, send the fans off cock a hoop, as it were. Looking at the Carlton North Melbourne game stats, look, from a disposal point of view, disposal efficiency, yeah, okay. North Melbourne dominated the hitouts, and stoppage clearances, they won by 2. They got smashed in centre clearance. They got shaded by about 20 in contested possession. Turnovers, though, they lost by 10, 62 to 52. So they had 10 more turnovers, to put it that way. And they were negative 10 marks inside 50, negative 8 contested marks. So just some effort, some skill execution stuff. They lost the game by 80 odd points, but they lost tackles by about 27. Carlton won tackle. So yeah, pathetic. Just on turnover as well, just an update.
So yeah, I was saying
yes, as
some of those areas.
Mentioned. Yeah. So assuming we're pressuring like we have done the last few weeks, we're tackling like we have done the last few weeks, the proof is in the pudding that they generally won't be able to cope with that. Continue in that fashion. We kicked accurately against Sydney. We got good looks. I think we kicked accurately against Hawthorn as well, as a whole.
Yes, yeah.
I do know that our goal kicking isn't topical in the social media sphere at the moment, so I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah, I haven't seen Jay Schultz's name in weeks, or since last year. I don't think, to be honest.
Schultz, yeah. Oh,
which,
man, his
way,
Twitter got a workout last year.
I think he's gotten engaged again from what I've seen on social media. So congrats to Jay. But
love Schultzy.
Yeah, but no, we do love Schultzy. It was just a funny storyline at times last year with the goal kicking. So yeah, when you brought that up, I was like, yeah, fuck, I haven't seen his name come up in fucking weeks since last year. Actually,
get Jay Schultz back to the club.
Yeah.
Just on turnover, just an update on our turnover standing in the competition. We've held our spot as the 4th best scores from turnover. We fell back to 12th in scores against, but the margins in that mid-pack are so small. And the last couple of weeks, while being wins, haven't been the dominant wins that we find ourselves an opportunity of having this week, where you do kind of reduce that average score against from turnover. So
played some very good teams,
but the sheer fact that we're
weeks, so that should always be reminded of constantly. So yeah.
That's it. But considering we're still 4th,
there are some teams in that window that have had some soft schedules as well. So like that should that's
what I mean. Like the Crows have started their season well, but their scores scores from turnover is just off the charts, and that would be heavily weighted by their first several rounds of football. And then on the alternative, our fucking game against Collingwood would be just an anchor to our average scores against over the first 6 rounds. So the fact of the matter is we've held up as the 4th best side so far, scores from turnover. So when you consider that coming up against a lesser like North Melbourne, if we are steadfast in improving the flip side to that, suggestion would be that, we should be winning, and we should be winning well. We're fit, we're healthy, we've got a good structure. Our game plan seems to be good. It seems to be different, causing oppositions headaches. Like you said, fourth quarter, we should be not stressed
Yeah,
at all.
absolutely. Just looking ahead at the injury list. Obviously, we won't know squads until this this Thursday, but interesting again. Once again, like it's every week. Like at some point, we'll get to a point where it's just looking like it's going to be unchanged. But this week again provides some interest. I mean, just to touch on the North Melbourne side, they've lost Zach Fisher, but Jackson Archer looks like could be a chance of coming back this week. So, he's a good young player, and obviously the son of someone who scared the living shit out of me as a kid. So depends if we'll see if Jackson Archer actually does make his way back, but he's a test. But on the more important side, on the Port Adelaide side, to completely buck my predictions of maybe a month or so ago, Brandon Zerk-Thatcher is going to be available for selection for football this week. Now, the way they say that will make his return to football this weekend makes me think that surely they're going the Magpies with him this week. But
absolutely, absolutely,
yeah. It is always interesting reading. It would be fraught with danger.
It would be foolishness of the highest order, to bring him straight back in, considering the plaudits that both you and I and the broader fan base have given to Asava Radicalea in conjunction with our noteworthy defenders.
Yes. Yeah, it's actually like Zerk-Thatcher actually does probably have to... I think he's good enough that if he has a good week or two in the Magpies, we'll see how that goes. He will fight his way back. But I think Asava's done enough that he doesn't just get shunted. Like, he does have to... Zerk-Thatcher has to prove maybe, and for me, if, we're playing North Melbourne this week, so maybe it's not, but if Asava has another good game and performs his role well, I think, and that Zerk-Thatcher comes back and is maybe a touch rusty, which is to be expected. Like, he might need a week or two to shake off the rust down in the twos. And Asava's done enough to at least be given the chance to fight for the position. Because I don't know if it's going to be a three, and again, you've said maybe they do have, there's a management situation, or there's going to be games where the situation calls for the three. But I know last year at times the three didn't work as well down back. So it's going to be an interesting selection thing when they're all available. Obviously, the best problem to have is having to work out who to pick and what structure to go with. But if they're going to work with the structure they've got at the moment, because it has been working okay, it's going to be Zerk-Thatcher or Asava, you'd think, at times, depending on the, again, game situation. But he is back available, which is far earlier than I expected. I just, at one point, just assumed it would be closer to the bye, if not after the bye, just with a back injury. But he's must have just gone leaps and bounds ahead of the recovery over the last few weeks, which is a good thing. It means he's just gotten ahead of it, and there's no doubt now. The only other one that is of note for this week is Ryan Burton is a test as well. I don't know if he gets back in. I don't think he does. Even he goes back into the Maggies at the moment. I think it was just based on the structure and mix that we've got going at the moment. Obviously, Ollie Wines isn't even listed on the injury report. So as far as the heart issue he had last week, the exact wording from the Port Adelaide website is Ollie Wines was subbed out of Sunday's game with a known heart issue, but the midfielder has consulted specialists and is expected to train as normal and be available for selection this week. So, no more need to be said on Ollie Wines until we see squads on Thursday. If there's any surprise, I think he's going to be available and will play this weekend. Only other note, Jack Lukosius, 4 to 6 weeks is an interesting note just on the injury list, not pertinent to this weekend, but he seems to be tracking well. They're saying he's going to be hitting the running track this week, which is really, really good progress for his injury from the Richmond game. So, injury list is shortening, and is a really good thing.
Always a good sign. We, or everyone, including us, were taking a conservative approach or opinion regarding Zerk-Thatcher. We just wrote him off for the whole season, basically, just to keep our hearts in check. But it looks like things have progressed well. It would be remiss of us not to bring him back through the Magpies just to get him up and about and get him used to playing football again. There's no rush. We do have a showdown in a few weeks' time to think about with a 3-tool threat. but we can cross that bridge when we need to. The fact of the matter is we're playing North Melbourne, who have a out of form Jack Darling and a Nick Larkey, who we're definitely going to have to pay some attention to. The other one kind of question mark that I would have is the watch that I had in Moraes. Like, what do we do there? Do we rest him? Do we keep faith in him? Alternatives for that look like being a Will Lorenz, maybe. He didn't light it up. Like, you were there, you'd be able to, comment probably more in depth. Hugh Jackson isn't doing too much wrong. Forgotten man. And then maybe the other one I heard, a left field option, is a Josh Lai, who was our supplemental
right,
pick.
yeah, and he's getting a lot of love. Yeah, he looked good.
Yeah.
Didn't get a ton of the ball, but what he did with it when he had it was very, very good. To be one of the better players on the field last week. It's hard the Sandful side because it is it is a reserve side, so they're kind of trying to, the mix is. But yeah, no, Lai looked good. Will Lorenz. I know. Yeah, there's not much. I didn't get to watch on TV. It's always different watching it at the game. I didn't notice too much of Will Lorenz last week myself.
He had the 15.
Yeah,
but he has that experience at AFL level that. I mean, it was a bit like,
and we all know he's
sometimes you just need to get in.
Yeah, and we all know he's a talented. I think we all know he's got what it takes to be a serviceable player, and then whatever extrapolation from that comes when he gets his chance. There's options, and then obviously Berry had a great game as well. But how that works into the mix of things is more the question as far as the direct replacement for Moraes, who's been operating more on the wing, the outer wing. So then it begins. But there's options, which is not. That's what the best thing about where we're at the moment is we're getting options back rather than struggling for who's going to be available. It's like there is a plethora suddenly of available, talented, whether it be experienced players like Zerk Thatcher or the youth that we've got in the system. So good problems to have. And I'll be looking forward to the squad show on Thursday night on Patreon to kind of dissect what we see once it drops at 5:50 p.m. I believe on Thursday evening.
Yeah.
Get around the Patreon. As I said, patreon.com/the Creed 1870. Do you have anything else at this point, or ready to log off and look forward to squads?
Nah, let's wrap it up. I am looking forward to squads. So thank you to the Patreon members. Very much appreciated. Thank you to everyone who listens, watches, and whatever. Patreon's $5.99 a month. It has recently changed. There will be a sponsorship tier. Details at a later date. Facebook, The Creed. Twitter, _The Creed. Instagram, _The Creed. Just for a nice flow there. Like, follow, subscribe, whatever you're doing. Give us some love. 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Pods, or what have you. It will help bring us to more Port Adelaide fans, which is all we want to do. Is like Dave said, footy community at the very heart of it. Port Adelaide footy community, which is the best in my opinion. No bias, of course, but yeah, thanks again everyone. Looking forward to the squad show on Thursday. That's all from me. Go Port.
Up the fucking crocodiles. Let's fucking go.